Chapter 1273. Jun Changshao sat on the patriarch's seat in the main hall with the plaque unyielding iron bones. He was so angry that his gums were about to bleed. He roared, "Yuan Feng!" Yes, Yuan Gongzi stood up in a panic. Why was the patriarch so angry all of a sudden? Was it because he took the initiative to bring people to the southern sea crossing state? But this was Elder Wei's suggestion. Shouldn't he be the one to blame? Am I going to take the blame? Forget it, forget it. I'll take the blame then. After all, I've taken the blame many times in the Demon Emperor's Gate. You. Jun Changshao pointed at Su Yangyi. It wasn't until he forcefully suppressed the fury in his heart that he completely roared. This time's command was very appropriate. I am very satisfied. The higher-ups of the sect almost fell over. I'm afraid that only my sect master is capable of praising someone with such a tone of admonishment. Yuan Gongzi was stunned. Was the patriarch praising him? Or was he blaming him? Of course, Jun Changshao was praising him. He was roaring with emotion because that yin-yang gate had already been flattened before he had arrived. Jiangya's sister was his sister. She was bullied to the point of losing her mind and memory. He couldn't take it anymore. The culprit had been dealt with, and he didn't participate in the whole process. No. I have to go to the southern sea crossing state. Jun Changshao made up his mind. Of course, it wasn't to extort the southern sea crossing state again. It was to complete Shirshan's mission. What was this mission? Within 3 years, promote the sect of all times to a first-rate sect and obtain the recognition of all the major sects and top powerhouses in the Starfall continent. It wasn't difficult to promote a first-rate sect. The key was to obtain the recognition of the sects and powerhouses. Although the 3 overseas states and the main continent had been separated for thousands of years, they were still part of the same plane. Therefore, Jun Changshao didn't want to screw up at this crucial moment. He had to go there personally to arrange everything. The system said, with the host's current mood, you'll definitely have to harvest another wave of leaks when you go to the southern sea crossing state. Am I that kind of person? You are. Dragon's Pine Peak. In a beautiful courtyard, light singing could be heard. The singer was Jiangya's sister. Her voice was gentle and melodious. Compared to Jun Changshao's, it was like heaven and earth. Jiangya, who was in the pavilion, was already in tears. The song that his sister sang was a folk song that had been circulating in Jiangjia town for a long time. When he was young, he loved to listen to it. Every night, he would pester her to sing it until he fell asleep. Her voice was still as beautiful as before, but her sister had forgotten about her and was sitting under the eaves, humming a little tune. That scene. It was very much like when he was a child, lying on her lap, listening to the song and slowly falling asleep. Sis. Jiangya said sorrowfully, I'm useless, I couldn't find you in time. Just as Jun Changshao thought, the loss of his only family member's thoughts and memories was too great a blow to him, so much so that he was constantly blaming himself after his return. Heavens! Jiangya stood up and shouted, I'm willing to use my cultivation and life in exchange for my sister's sanity. Clap, clap, clap. Applause suddenly came from behind. Jun Changshao was sitting on a rock at some point in time. He crossed his legs and clapped. The relationship between siblings is very touching. Patriarch. Jiangya asked in surprise, when did you come back? Jun Changshao was speechless. The 9 emperors returned and bowed to me in public. He actually didn't see such a big commotion. It seemed that his sister's matter was too big a blow to him, so much so that he ignored everything. Elder Jiang. Jun Changshao jumped down from the rock and placed a hand on his shoulder. He said, a real man will not sink into self-blame. Instead, he will think of a way to change an unfair fate. This is the principle that Li Jing taught me. Li Jing, when did I say that? Patriarch, I've heard about your sister's matter. Jun Changshao opened his hand and a round pill appeared in his palm. He said, "This pill can restore consciousness and recover damage. Give it to your sister." Jiang Ye was dumbfounded. After learning that Jiang Ye's sister's mind was damaged because of the pill, her behavior was sluggish and she lost her memory. Jun Changshao immediately thought of the 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill, so he immediately decided to take it out. However, it was still worth 10,000 contribution points. It was really, hurry up. He turned his head, closed his eyes, and shouted, "Don't let me see this pill again. I hate it." Whoosh! Jiang Ye hurriedly took the pill. He didn't have time to thank him. He strode to his sister's side, controlled it with spiritual energy, and threw it into his mouth. A miracle happened. The woman with sluggish eyes had just taken the 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill. Her clear eyes gradually regained their luster. It seemed that her stiff face gradually had expression. The disappeared memories flooded into her mind like a flood. Even her haggard face seemed to be reborn. Jiang Ye was overjoyed. "Little Xie. Are you little Xie?" The big sister sitting next to him suddenly raised her head to look at him before asking in a trembling and skeptical voice. Jiang Ye instantly lost control of his emotions. Large tears rolled down his face. In the end, he hugged the person closest to him and sobbed, "Sister, it's me. I'm little Xia." Amidst this happy and heartwarming scene of siblings reuniting with each other, Jun Changshao, who was ruining everything, had appeared. At this moment, the expression on his face was quite interesting because his evil spirit's name was Little Xia. This brat seemed to share the same name. The host can change the Xia of evil to the Yi of Mo Xia, the system suggested. Under the powerful effects of the 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill, Jiang Ye's sister, Jiang Ling, regained her consciousness and regained her memory. The two of them were finally reunited after several decades. To be honest, it was a bit of an overkill. However, Jun Changshao didn't care at all. The family of his disciples were his family. What did it matter if he spent 10,000 contribution points on them? "I can't." Jun Changshao clutched his chest and said, "It hurts, Li Fei." There were a lot of things that needed to be said between the two of them, so Goxing didn't want to disturb them. He turned around and left the courtyard. "Wait!" Jiang Ling hurriedly yelled. Jun Changshao stopped. "What's the matter, sister? You're the patriarch of the sect of all times?" Jiang Ling asked in a weak voice. Jiang Ye was stunned. His sister knew the patriarch. "That's right." Jun Changshao said in a carefree manner, "I am the patriarch of the sect of all times." "Ah!" Jiang Ling suddenly pushed her brother away and sprinted over. She shrieked and waved her hands, "It's really Master Jun. I finally see you in person today. You look much more handsome than you do on the light screen." Jun Changshao's expression became more and more interesting. Could it be that Jiang Ye's sister was a fan of his? This matter had started when Jun Changshao had brought his disciples to participate in the dragon and tiger battle for supremacy. At that time, he had frequently appeared on the screens of various cities, madly advertising. Although he had attracted the disdain of many people, he had also gained many fans. Jiang Ling was one of them. She was even the #1 female fan. She was also the leader of a fan club in a certain city. Her slogan was "Fan of you, crazy for you, love you for life." Ah! She was still screaming. She was so excited that she seemed to pass out at any time. Jun Changshao touched his head helplessly. Then, he looked at the camera and said, "The author doesn't have any female fans." His expression gradually changed. He smiled and said, "I do." "Jun Patriarch. Why are you bald at such a young age?" Chapter 1274. Jiang Ling was captured by the Yin-Yang sect and brought to the South Sea Fairy State recently. A few years ago, she was on the mainland and saw Jun Changshao's advertisement on the light screen. At that time, she was an ordinary maid in a big family in a county. Because she changed her identity and name, the Drizzle Hall searched for her but failed to find any clues. Later, Jiangye gradually comprehended the essence soul and began to look for his sister. She was found and kidnapped by the Yin-Yang sect when she went out to buy groceries. She traveled across the sea for several years before arriving at the South Sea Fairy State. In other words, during the years when Jiangye searched frantically, his sister was actually on the way across the sea. The Yin-Yang sect was not an evil sect in the traditional sense. Although their cultivation method emphasized the balance of yin and yang, it would also benefit both sides. However, to ensure that the beneficiaries would not betray or leak the secret, the captured women had to take soul-destroying drugs and forget themselves and their memories. To put it bluntly, she was completely controlled and turned into a puppet. This was the rule set by the Yin-Yang sect when they chose their cauldrons. All the captured women had to go through it. Jiang Ling was beaten several times because she did not compromise and resisted. Of course, the drugs needed some time to take effect. Therefore, when Jiangye arrived, she had not been assigned to a disciple and had not been sullied. However, because of the drugs, her soul and mind were damaged, and she almost became demented. For others, the damage to the soul might be irreversible, but it could be reversed easily in front of a cheat. Therefore, a 9 transformation spirit refreshing pill immediately recovered Jiang Ling's soul and mind. In the main hall, Jun Changxiao's head was about to explode. Although Elder Zhang's sister had recovered, she would always squat on the path he had to pass and scream, crazy for you, forever in love with you. At first, Go Sheng enjoyed it. After all, he finally met a female fan. However, as time passed, he could not stand it anymore. It was mainly because she was too passionate. The most depressed one was Jiangye. It was not easy to find his long-lost sister. They should have chatted happily and increased their affection for each other. However, as soon as they talked about the patriarch. They admired him to the extreme. Little Xia, does Jun Patriarch have a girlfriend? Little Xia, what hobbies does Jun Patriarch have? Little Xia, Jun Patriarch, sis. Jiangye hugged his head and broke down. The patriarch not only has a girlfriend, but he also has a wife. You're already in your 50s or 60s. Can you not be as childish as a little girl? Coincidentally, Jun Changxiao was passing by. When he heard what he said, he almost stumbled and fell to the ground. In a world where the average lifespan was 200 years, 50 to 60 years old was very young. However, in Go Sheng's previous world, she was already an auntie who had begun to dance in the public square. That's right. The system sharply ridiculed, even if the host has fans, they're only at the level of a mother, because young girls all like cool and handsome men like Yi Xingchen. Who would like a shameless person like him? Because the words were too true and cruel, they seemed to have turned into a dagger, ruthlessly stabbing Jun Changxiao in the heart, causing him to ferociously clutch his chest. Elder Jiang. In the study, Jun Changxiao said seriously, "Are you sure you want our sister to live in the Iron Bone town and not become a member of the sect?" Jiangye said, "Patriarch, my sister's aptitude is ordinary, that's not a problem." Jun Changxiao interlocked his fingers and said, "I can make her have the aptitude of the holy level immediately." After all, Jiangye was the first appointed elder. His sister was his sister. If she was willing to become a member of the sect, it would not be a problem to give her the aptitude package. The contribution points did not allow him to upgrade all the disciples' aptitudes to the holy level, but he could upgrade one person. This, Jiangye thought for a moment and said, "I'll ask my sister." After learning the situation, Jiang Ling shook her head and said, "Little Xia, I'm not cut out for martial arts. You'd better settle me down in the town at the foot of the mountain." After learning that Jun Changxiao had a wife, she gradually calmed down from her fanaticism and began to think about her future life. Jiang Ling was actually the same as Sister Qiao. They were the most ordinary people. They preferred to live an ordinary life rather than pursue martial arts. "Sister," Jiangye said, "I understand." The next day, accompanied by her brother, Jiang Ling left the sect of all times and settled down in the Iron Bone town. She was hired by Aunt Wang to take care of the increasingly popular Yunlai. Because second young Master Tang had built the Tang's elixir workshop here and was responsible for selling healing elixirs and other elixirs, he would attract countless customers every day. Therefore, Yunlai's business was also very good. Aunt Wang was inspired by a chat with Jun Changshao. Under the name of Wang's Chain Inn, she developed in Qingyang Town and even Qingyang City. Today, there were more than 10 chain stores of various sizes. Moreover, there were signs of expansion in Liang City, Huyang City, and other places. Aunt Wang. Jun Changshao joked, "You're going to be an inn tycoon in the future." Aunt Wang walked out of the kitchen and placed a bowl of noodles in front of him. She said grumpily, "Why do you, the leader of a sect, always come to my place to eat and drink? It's delicious." Jun Changshao picked up his chopsticks and smiled, "Aunt Wang, give me a scallion." Although Gosheng did not have any blood relatives in this world, the villagers of Qingyang village were all his family. Therefore, every time he came to Iron Bone Town, he felt very warm. Plop! In Jun Changshao's study, Jiangye bent his knees and knelt firmly on the ground, saying, "Thank you, Patriarch." Bang! In the next second, the window shattered and he flew out. Then, he slid on the ground for dozens of feet before coming to a stop. Jun Changshao stood in the study and said calmly, "A man has gold under his knees. If you dare to kneel again, no matter if you're an elder or a disciple, you'll be sent to the discipline hall for punishment." Understood. Jiangye said with difficulty. The return of the patriarch was a joyous occasion. Therefore, in these few days, the entire sect was filled with a joyous atmosphere. But the only one who was not happy was Shang Yuhen. Because at this moment, he was trembling in front of the goal. In front of him stood Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, Tian Qi and the others. "Junior brother." Su Xiaoma smiled, "Guarding the goal is a compulsory course for all disciples. It's also the culture of the sect of all times. Just relax and don't be too nervous." Shang Yuhen was about to cry. During this period, he had seen his senior brother play football. It was simply too cruel. Bang! Just as Shang Yuhen was thinking, the happy football hit his face. After leaving a mark on the ball, it bounced back and landed at Li Fei's feet. Swoosh! He shoveled with his foot and the ball rose. Whoosh whoosh! His whole body rose into the air and hung upside down. Boundless spiritual energy poured into his feet. The scene seemed to freeze in an instant. On the screen, a few shocking crimson words appeared: "Super kill. Little Li Fei's feet. No, rumble." A violent gust of wind burst out, and the goal disappeared. Not long after, there was a new patient in Medical Peak's medical hall. Jun Patriarch. In the main hall, Ifeishua, Nebula Kid and the others sat down. Finally, they could not help but ask, "Where is the Yixingchen that was mentioned before?" Chapter 1275. Boom! Boom! Inside the life and death secret realm, a powerful spirit power exploded, shaking the space. Spirit beasts were killed by the fist shadows one after another until they all disappeared. Yixingchen stopped, sweating profusely. He had reached the peak of Wu Huang long ago, and the training in the life and death secret realm had almost no effect. However, in order to improve even a little bit, he still tortured himself. Since his rebirth, Yixingchen had been strict with his training, shaping his body, soul, and attributes. Although he had yet to reach the level of cultivation he had in his previous life, his current strength had already far surpassed those of the same realm back then. In fact, he could even be described as being miles ahead. Aonyo explained that success was not only about innate talent, but also about hard work. However, Gosheng explained that success was that it did not matter if he did not work hard, because he could still cheat. Of course, it was not that Jun Changshao did not want to work hard, but as the leader of a martial school, he was destined not to live for himself. He was destined to sacrifice for the whole martial school. Gosheng felt bitter, but Gosheng did not say anything. Phew! After a short rest, Yi Xingqian walked out of the life and death secret realm. Just as he was about to enter the Nine Heavens secret realm, Jun Changxiao's voice came into his ears, "Anyo, come to the palace." Yi Xingqian frowned slightly, and a trace of uneasiness rose in his heart. The patriarch's call, as a disciple, he had to go. Therefore, after a slight hesitation, he went to the palace. However, as soon as he walked in, he felt a few pairs of eyes on him. The powerful aura could be described as shocking. Expert! Expert! Yi Xingqian suppressed his shock and looked over. He found 3 powerful warriors sitting in the front seats. One had 9 swords on the table, one was full of alcohol, and the last one was holding a pen. Everyone. Jun Changxiao said, "This is Yi Xingqian, the disciple I value the most." If it were Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji, they would definitely feel comfortable when they heard the words, "most important," but the uneasiness in Night Emperor's heart grew stronger. Yi Feishue, Wine Demon, and Nebula Kid carefully sized up this disciple of the sect of all times. The more they looked at him, the more they felt that he wasn't very powerful. Could he really be worthy of the title, Supreme? Xingqian. Jun Changxiao said, "These 3 would like to consult with you." "Sure." Yi Xingqian said proudly. Although he felt uneasy and knew that the 3 of them were not simple, Night Emperor's pride and dignity were still there. He would not be afraid. In the cafeteria, Yi Xingqian, who had been incomparably arrogant just a moment ago, now had a very interesting expression on his face. This was because this guy who reeked of alcohol was actually asking for advice on a drinking contest. No way. How could this be? Anyo was instantly terrified. He sent a telepathic message, "Patriarch, I said that you are the supreme of the path of wine. You have to back up this boast." Jun Changxiao sent a telepathic message in all seriousness. "Ga." Yi Xingqian's facial muscles instantly stiffened. "Don't you know how much alcohol I can hold? How dare you say that you are the supreme of the path of wine? Are you bragging or are you purposely tricking me?" "Friend." Wine Demon placed one leg on the chair and said boldly, "Shall we brag to the jar or drink from the bowl?" Yi Xingqian had no choice but to brace himself. However, it was definitely not realistic to brag to the jar, and his strength did not allow him to do so. Hence, he said, "Bowl. 1 black, 2 black." Jun Changxiao snapped his fingers and said, "Serve the bowls." "Yes." 1 black, 2 black walked up and placed 2 bowls on the table. Yi Xingqian's eyes widened. This was because the size of the bowl was the same as the wash basin. "Patriarch," he said frantically, "when did the cafeteria have such big bowls? Why haven't I seen them before?" "I just asked someone to go down the mountain and buy them," Jun Changxiao said. Yi Xingqian's mouth suddenly twitched. "Tricked me. Definitely tricked me." Swoosh! 1 black and 2 black were responsible for filling the wine. Wine Demon salivated when he smelled the fragrance of the wine. Then, he raised the bowl and said, "I'll drink first as a toast." Gulp, gulp. After saying that, he raised his head and drank freely. "Damn!" Su Xiaoma and the others who were standing outside the cafeteria said in disbelief, "So fierce?" Yi Xingqian's expression changed again and again. "Paw!" Wine Demon put down the empty bowl and said with a fist and palm salute, "Please enlighten me." As soon as he finished speaking, his head hit the ground and he passed out drunk. "Pfft, huh. I thought that guy was very powerful. So he passed out after 1 bowl." Su Xiaoma and the others roared with laughter. Jun Changxiao was puzzled. When they were drinking in hell, this guy drank a jar. Although the bowl was bigger this time, he shouldn't have passed out directly. "Patriarch," Lon Kong said, "he drank the improved version of drunken and dreamy 2nd generation. The effect of absorbing spiritual energy is stronger and the alcohol is stronger." Jun Changxiao said in realization, "I see. Both of you." He looked at Yi Feishue and Nebula Kid who were acting as the judges and said loudly, This is the special brew of our sect of all times. The disciples usually drink it like water. Wine Demon drank one bowl and passed out. The winner should be decided, right? It is. Yifei cupped his fist and said, "Your disciple won." Yi Xingchen almost fell over. He won without drinking the wine. What kind of competition is this? Can you be more professional? Can you respect me? Night Emperor's anger suddenly surged up. He lifted the basin-sized bowl and gulped it down. His face was flushed red as he stood up shakily and roared, "I can still drink." Jun Changshao opened his mouth in surprise. After drinking so much wine, Yi Xingchen was still able to stand up and didn't collapse. Yi Xingchen's alcohol tolerance had obviously improved while Jiang Yi wasn't around. Plop! Suddenly, Yi Xingchen fell to the ground, drunk to the point of unconsciousness. He was still talking nonsense. I am not going to the livestock pen. I am not going to the spirit beast peak. I will go to my bed, sigh. Su Xiaoma and the others shook their heads. Such a situation had been seen many times after the patriarch left. Yi Xingchen really couldn't handle alcohol, but Lan Kang's modified drunken and dreamy could greatly increase the speed of attribute absorption. After a difficult decision, he started to train his alcohol tolerance every day. When the wine gourd was filled to the brim with wine, he would drink a mouthful every morning, noon, and night. Just like that, during the few months that Jun Changshao left, Niu got drunk again and again. His alcohol tolerance had slowly increased. Yes. Yi Xingchen was still drunk. But if he could stand up after drinking the same bowl of wine, endure a little longer than the alcohol demon, and even speak one more word, it meant that he had won. The reason behind this man's success was because he was carried back from the livestock pen by Li Qingyang from the spirit beast peak. Please remember, Night Emperor must not be humiliated. Go against the wind and sail against the current. Watching Anyo being carried away by Li Qingyang and the others, Jun Changshao stood with his hands behind his back and spoke with pride, "This is the disciple that this great one values the most. This is the indelible spirit of the sect of all times." Night arrived. Layers of arrays appeared in the livestock pen as hundreds of disciples were on guard. In the spirit beast hall of the spirit beast peak, every room was locked up. Elder Nyo and the other spirit beasts were on guard as though they were facing a formidable enemy. He is here. He is here. He is here again. Under the bright moon, a shadow walked over unhurriedly. Chapter 1276. My head hurts. Yi Xingchen held his head and said a line that he often said before slowly opening his eyes. Sigh. I'm drunk again. Night Emperor tried hard to recall what happened yesterday, but his memory was still stuck at the time when he stood up and picked up the basin-sized bowl. After practicing his alcohol tolerance for a few months, he was already used to drinking until he blacked out and was used to being unconscious. Therefore, his emotional fluctuations were not as strong as before. To be exact, he had already given up his face and dignity, as long as Yi Xingchen forced a smile when he sensed that he had become more sensitive to the elements of heaven and earth. Ah no. He really changed. This change was no longer important to Yi Xingchen. What was important was that he could become stronger and ascend to the higher domain as soon as possible so that he could take revenge on that woman. Creak. After washing up, Nyo walked out. Junior brother Yi, you were too powerful yesterday. Not only did you win against drinking, but you also won against using a sword and a pen. Su Xiaoma walked over from afar and gave a thumbs up. Yi Xingchen was stunned. Didn't I compete with that guy in drinking yesterday? Since when did I compete with a pen and a sword? In the main hall. Yifei cupped his hands and said, Jun Patriarch, your disciple's understanding of swordsmanship has left me in awe. I've competed with people in writing countless times, but this is the first time I've seen someone so drunk that he can use a sword to write bold and unconstrained calligraphy. Nebula Kid said with admiration. You flatter me, you flatter me. Jun Changshao said this, but he muttered in his heart, I didn't expect Anyo to be so strong when he's drunk. Yesterday, on the Spirit Beast Peak, Yixingchen walked over unhurriedly and insisted on finding a bed to sleep on. However, he was stopped by the members of the Spirit Beast Hall and the battle started. The drunk Anyo's combat strength increased tremendously and he even drew out his sword. His drunken behavior was so bad that it was unbearable to look at. Yixingchen was already drunk, so he didn't have any pattern when he used his sword moves. Yifei, who was watching from afar, was amazed. Nebula Kid also saw the charm of calligraphy. Thus, the two of them were deeply impressed. Reader, can you be any more perfunctory? This, on the Spirit Beast Peak, Yixingchen stood on the martial arts stage that still had traces of battle. He looked at the crisscrossing sword scars and asked with a dull expression, was it really done by me? Junior brother. Su Xiaomao pointed at the sword scars all over the ground and said, yesterday, that expert who was writing looked at it for a full 2 hours. In the end, he looked up to the sky and sighed. This is the true realm of calligraphy, this is the true sovereign of the literary path. Yixingchen fell silent. How could he tell the level of calligraphy from the sword marks I made when I was drunk? Is that guy crazy? I can't say it like that. Maybe the master's vision is incomparable to that of ordinary people. Maybe Anyo really wrote a soul-stirring song by waving his sword without any pattern. I can't make it up anymore. 3. In the main hall, Jun Changshao said seriously, since you've seen the strength of a disciple of the Sect of all times, are you interested in staying here and sparring with him every day? This guy finally revealed his fangs. He didn't intentionally make Yixingchen into the omnipotent king to trick him, but he wanted to trick these experts. No matter if they won or lost, he wanted to keep them for his own use. June Patriarch. Alcohol Demon said, I am willing to stay. He, who was obsessed with wine, had been subdued by drunken life. As long as there was enough wine and food, staying in the Sect of all times wasn't a problem. What about the two of you? Jun Changshao asked. Yifei remained silent for a moment and said, Jun Patriarch Sect is rich in spirit energy and has a beautiful environment. It is suitable for long-term sword comprehension. That's right. Nebula Kid said, to comprehend the literary path in such a picturesque environment is my lifelong pursuit. He wasn't being polite. In fact, the Sect of all times environment and spirit energy were excellent. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was the best place in the Falling Star continent. The three experts agreed to stay. Of course, it wasn't because of Yixingchen's multiple supreme titles. It was mainly because Jun Changshao had saved them from prison, which was a great favor. As for Di Ting, Hui Yanyao, and the other main culprits, they either became contract beasts or had their soul origin controlled. Therefore, there was no need to persuade them. They were set to join the Sect of all times. Other than the unlucky Eye of the Void, who was locked in the 9th level of prison as a reservoir, the others could enter and leave freely. Senior Shang. Jun Changshao said, are you returning to the Tianyuan continent or staying in the Sect of all times? Sigh. The Shang ancestor shook his head and said, I have long seen through everything in the world. I only hope to break through to the void-piercing realm in my lifetime. If Jun Patriarch doesn't mind, I am willing to stay here for the rest of my life. Of course. The other reason was to accompany Shang Yuhen. Jun Changshao took out the entry form and started the entry process. Paw! The Patriarch's seal fell. A powerhouse who was about to enter the void-piercing realm became a member of the Sect of all times. And for the sake of Shang Yuhen's ancestor, Gosheng did not accept the entry fee. Yifei, Nebula Kid, Wine Demon, Iron Marquis, Qin Linran, and Hui Yenyao went through the procedures to become members of the Sect of all times. Di Ting was a contract beast, so it did not enter the Sect. At this point, the Sect of all times had 8 more lower void-piercing realm and 1 more middle void-piercing realm. Their strength could be described as crazy. Not counting Eye of the Void and Di Ting, there were only 7 in total. Why were there 2 more? It was Guan Zhou and He Qi. As spies planted by Jun Changshao, they were locked in hell by the fortress master and were beaten crazily by Hui Yenyao. The brothers finally had a good time. Without a doubt. In terms of the overall strength of the sect of all times, no force in the falling star continent could compete with it. Even in the stronger planes of the mortal universe, it was daddy level. Not yet. We still have to upgrade the sect to first class. They had the strength, but they did not have the required number of disciples and could not meet the requirements of the epic mission. So Jun Changshao specifically told the Ning brothers to be more open in recruitment and try to recruit 100,000 disciples as soon as possible. In the study, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the other core disciples stood neatly, each holding a pill that the patriarch just gave them. This is the half-step wuxing pill. Jun Changshao put his legs on the table and said casually, after taking it, you can break through to half-saint. The sect master had given them a lot of potions and pills, so when Li Qingyang and the others received the half-saint pill, they could more or less guess what it was. However, when they knew the effects, they were still shocked and stood rooted to the ground. Gulp. While everyone was in a daze, Yi Xingchen had already swallowed the pill. Huff, huff, huff. Huff, 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 huff. After a while, a heavy aura exploded in the study and rushed out unscrupulously, eventually covering the entire sect of all times. Yi Xingchen. He broke through to half-step wusheng. Huff. Huff, huff. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others gradually calmed down and swallowed the pills. Then, a spectacular scene of more than 10 disciples breaking through to half-step wusheng was played out. What is that? In the Qingyang city, the busy martial artists looked up and saw thick clouds in the direction of the Iron Bone Mountain. Huff! In the ice layer sky of the Nine-Heaven Mystery Realm, Jun Changshao stood in the snowy environment and looked up. There is a pill here that can help you break through to half-saint. Lu Qianqian, who was sitting on the mountain peak cultivating, opened her eyes and said, "When did the patriarch come back?" "He has been back for a few days." Jun Changshao threw the pill and said in a commanding tone, "Hurry up and take it." Oh. Lu Qianqian swallowed the half-saint pill and broke through to half-saint from peak Wuhuan. Just as she looked surprised, Jun Changshao took out something that looked like a conch and put it near his mouth. Improve Lu Qianqian. Reason. My first disciple. She meets the requirements. Whoosh, the treasure called Keep Your Word suddenly disintegrated and turned into powder that flew toward Lu Qianqian. When the powder touched her body, she broke through to wusheng from half-saint. Chapter 1277. Jun Changshao had been thinking about who to give it to after obtaining the promised true deed. First of all, this thing had a limit. The highest level was wusheng, so the higher-ups of the sect could almost be ruled out because Ding Xingwang, Jiang Ye, and the others had either reached wusheng or had been fighting for a long time in the semi-sage realm. Obviously, disciples were suitable. Disciples who had just broken through a realm were more cost-effective. The promised true deed could forcibly raise one's realm. To put it bluntly, it was cheating. If it was given to a martial disciple or martial master, it would definitely not be as good as a semi-sage, so it could only be given to a core disciple. After careful consideration, Jun Changshao chose Lu Qianqian. Reason. His eldest disciple. In fact, Jun Changshao thought the same as the divine grade aptitude liquid. According to the order, the disciples would benefit sooner or later, but, after using it, it was gone. One-time use. The system said, otherwise. From the conch shape, Jun Changshao thought it could be used repeatedly, but at most, there would be some conditions to use it next time. Host, you're thinking too much. The system said, this kind of heaven-defying thing that can forcibly raise one's cultivation level, if it's not a one-time use, wouldn't it create a group of 100,000 wusheng in minutes? Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed. He was too idealistic at the beginning. The reality was actually very cruel. The system was speechless. This was a good thing that allowed his disciple to advance a level for no reason. What else could he complain about? Could it be that he had really floated to the horizon? Humans. The system sighed. They're too greedy. When Jun Changshao was sighing in his heart, Lu Qianqian was still in a daze. Before she could calm down her state of mind after breaking through to semi-sage, she broke through to Wusheng in the next second. This rhythm was a bit too fast, and she couldn't keep up. After a while, she suppressed the strong shock in her heart and the huge change in her body. She still couldn't believe it and said, "Broke through to Wusheng." "That's right," Jun Changshao said. Although Lu Qianqian did not know why she had broken through, she knew that it had something to do with him. She stood up and said, "Thank you, Patriarch. As the eldest disciple, you should take on the responsibility of being the eldest disciple. You should take care of your fellow disciples. Don't stay in the frozen heavens all day to cultivate alone," Jun Changshao said. Yi Xingchen, who had the least sense of belonging, had already moved into the Linyan pavilion, but this woman was still lacking. Go Sheng was a little anxious. Lu Qianqian said, "Understood." Although he said so, he still continued to cultivate in Bingzhongtian. It wasn't that he didn't care about his fellow disciples, but that he had just broken through and needed to stabilize his realm. To avoid being accused of being biased, Jun Changshao left the secret realm and returned to his study. He began to seriously consider how to complete the epic quest. "Master." Little Long Long rubbed his eyes and walked over. Then, he laid down in his little nest and said, "I'm so sleepy. I'm going to sleep." "Yes." 9 heavens. After Lu Qianqian stabilized his realm, he slowly opened his eyes and said to himself, "Grand Elder, I have already broken through to Wusheng. Can I go to that place and search for the second half of Taishuan's icy hard art?" A rare look of confusion appeared in her clear eyes, because a sentence kept echoing in her ears, "Child, before you have absolute confidence, you must not go there easily, because you will most likely die." "Grand Elder." Lu Qianqian was depressed, and said, "This disciple is still unable to truly achieve a heart as calm as water. This might be related to the fact that I have not cultivated the second half, so." His gaze became firm. "Even if there is no chance of survival, I have to go." When she was in the Taishan sect, she began to cultivate the first half of the Taishuan's icy hard art. It was the Grand Elder who taught her privately. Although her cultivation was crippled later on, she relied on a mysterious mental cultivation method to start all over again. The first half had a total of 4 levels. After inheriting the Ice Emperor's inheritance, Lu Qianqian had already comprehended it. If he wanted to achieve higher results, he could only cultivate the second half. Moreover, the mental cultivation method left behind by the old man in Taishan had always emphasized on one realm, and that was the heart as still as water. Only by truly comprehending it could one master it. Lu Qianqian had always been exploring, and every time he felt that he was just a small step away, it was as if he was separated by a huge mountain. Especially after becoming a disciple of the sect of all times, his state of mind would always fluctuate. Was his Tao heart unstable? Or was it that he had to cultivate the second half in order to achieve a heart as calm as water? Lu Qianqian had been confused before, but in the end, he concluded that the reason why he was unable to reach this realm was because his mental cultivation method was incomplete. Now that he had broken through to Wusheng, he had the idea to search for it. In the study room, Jun Changshao opened the system panel and clicked on the function. The listed functions of the Forging Pavilion and the Spirit Beast Pavilion all had a plus sign, indicating that they could be upgraded. Ding! The Forging Pavilion has been successfully upgraded to an enhanced version of the Forging Pavilion. After the Pill Pavilion was strengthened, it saved materials and increased the speed of refining pills. It brought endless benefits to the sect, so Jun Changshao prioritized upgrading the Forging Pavilion. After all, in terms of usage, weapons and equipment were only limited to pills. As expected. After reading through many weapon and equipment refinement formulas, the amount of materials needed was greatly reduced, and the speed of refining a weapon was also much faster. Jun Changshao was overjoyed. The complete Truyang set is no longer a distant dream, 100,000 disciples were trained in all sorts of martial arts facilities and mystic realms. Their strength was much greater than other martial artists of the same boundary. In addition, if they were to wear the mighty true yang set and stand in the skies, forming the four corners heaven and earth array, the scene would be extremely shocking. Goshen grinned, looking forward to that day. The system complained. You can't afford it, so don't daydream. Jun Changshao rolled his eyes, and the joy on his face gradually disappeared. He thought to himself, it's been almost half a month since the 9 great martial emperors were rescued. Why hasn't Shirshirsi's mission been completed yet? Maybe the host, ding. Epic mission completed. Beginning calculation. Ding. The host has successfully rescued the 9 great martial emperors from the starry sky fortress safely. The conditions have been met. Epic mission completed. Completion rate, 100%. The host has received 100,000 contribution points. Ding. Sect contribution points, 1,900,001,00000. Ding. Sect contribution points overflow. Right now, the system even had the heart to die. The host has been in the falling star continent for so long and has yet to settle. I just opened my mouth and it can't wait to slap my face. Jun Changshao was happy. Shirshirsi's mission completion actually gave him 100,000 contribution points. He instantly felt that he had money and could be willful. Don't be agitated, don't be cocky. Goshen calmed down and thought to himself, there's still Shirshir-san to complete. To be honest, Jun Changshao was a little anxious now. After all, the main culprit was taken away from hell. The Starry Sky Fortress would definitely not let it go. Once their identity was exposed, they would definitely send patrol envoys over. The overall strength of the sect had become much stronger after Yifei and the others joined. However, facing 12 void-piercing realm experts was a little difficult. Not to mention. And this was only the patrol envoys. Who knew if there were other departments in the Starry Sky Fortress, or if there were stronger existences? Especially the fortress master who had not appeared. What kind of strength was this? There were too many unknowns, making Jun Changshao extra cautious. Patriarch. At this moment, Lu Qianqian walked into the study and said, your disciple requests to go out for a period of time. Jun Changshao said in surprise, isn't the frozen heavens the best place for ice element cultivators to train? Is there a place stronger than it in the falling star continent? Your disciple is not going out for training. What are you going to do? Can your disciple not say? No. Chapter 1278. Jun Changshao clasped his fingers together and fell silent. He wanted to know the reason why Lu Qianqian went out. The former directly told him about finding the second half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique. This news shocked Gosheng. Because in the Starry Sky Fortress, the 9 great martial emperors had mentioned that the second half might be hiding a great formation that could seize the heavens and earth. It could ignore cultivation and forcefully ascend to the higher realm. The formation left behind by the Taishan Elder was very terrifying. Even if he didn't have the intention to ascend now, he still planned to find it. After all, it might come in handy in the future. Jun Changshao said, you've cultivated the first half. Yes. Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changshao said in realization, no wonder Xia Shuiyan's coldness is so different from yours, even though they're both disciples of the Taishan Zone. You can go. He paused and said, but I'll follow you. Lu Qianqian said, according to the records of the first half, the second half is hidden in the cave where the Taishan Elder went into seclusion. It's very dangerous inside. If we go in, I won't ask, and you won't say. Are you going to take the risk alone? Jun Changshao interrupted. Lu Qianqian fell silent. Jun Changshao said, you still don't think of yourself as a disciple of the sect of all times. You don't think of this place as your home. I just don't want to implicate the patriarch. Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changshao looked at her and said, the cave where the Taishan Elder went into seclusion, Is it a mountain of blades and a sea of flames? Can't I deal with it with my strength? After saving the 9 great martial emperors, Go Sheng was a little arrogant. In his opinion, he could do whatever he wanted in the falling star continent. On the surface, it seemed to be true. Lu Qianqian said, I know that the patriarch is very strong now, but, the Taishan elder, no buts. Jun Changshao interrupted again, I can come and go freely in any forbidden area on the falling star continent. There is no danger. He was very arrogant and domineering. The system complained, how come I didn't see the host being this aggressive in the fortress? All right. Lu Qianqian said, since the patriarch is going, this disciple cannot stop him. Wait until I've settled the sect's internal affairs, Jun Changshao said, then we'll go to Taishuan's Immortal's cave. Lu Qianqian said, then this disciple will take her leave. Yes. With Jun Changshao's character, he would never take the initiative to ask his disciples about their secrets. But today, he still asked. With Lu Qianqian's personality, she wouldn't say anything even if she had a secret in her heart. However, she still said it today. The system couldn't help but lament, did they take the wrong medicine? One never asked, but suddenly asked. The other never spoke, but suddenly spoke. There was indeed something unusual about this. There wasn't much to arrange for the sect's affairs. After all, everything was as it was before Jun Changshao came, and everything was as it was after he came. Host. The system said, I think it's better not to be careless. After all, Taishuan's Immortal is a legend of the falling star continent. The Immortal's cave where Taishuan's ice heart technique is hidden may have many traps and forbidden formations. You're a toxic healer, so I have to go, Jun Changshao said. I'm serious. Am I not serious at all? Of course. Jun Changshao said seriously, I also want to go and see if the legendary Taishuan's Immortal's cave left any good treasures behind. I see. The system was enlightened. It turned out that this guy not only had his eyes on the great formation of seizing heaven and earth, but also had other ideas. He was really like Go Sheng. Actually, Jun Changshao was full of respect for the Taishuan's Immortal. After all, to be able to create 2 divine martial arts, he was definitely a top expert in the mortal world. Now that he knew there was a Immortal's cave, even if it wasn't for the sake of finding the Taishuan's ice heart technique, he still had to go and pay his respects. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head. When can I become a legend of the falling star continent? The paper I leave behind to wipe my ass will become a treasure that the younger generation will fight over years later. Do the younger generation have a grudge against you? The system asked. A few days later. The ancient warship hovered above the main peak. Jun Changshao stood at the bow, while Lu Qianqian stood at the stern. Patriarch. Li Fei, who was standing on the training ground, raised his head and said, this disciple can follow. Before he could finish, Su Xiaoma covered his mouth. This time, I'm going out. All of you have to cultivate diligently. Yes. Whoosh, the ancient warship turned into a streak of light and disappeared from the main peak. Li Fei was puzzled. Senior brother, what are you doing? Su Xiaoma rolled his eyes at him and said, the patriarch and senior sister rarely go out alone. Why are you following them? As expected of someone personally taught by Elder Wei, his eyesight was very sharp. Yes, yes, yes. Li Fei slapped his forehead and said, why didn't I think of that? Luckily, senior brother stopped me. I almost made a mistake. No. Yi Xingqian, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly woke up from his dream. His forehead was covered in sweat, and his face was gradually becoming more and more ferocious. He was dreaming again. He was dreaming of the difficulties he went through when he obtained the Taishuan Sutra. Nyo was not afraid of anything except for the process of obtaining the sutra in his previous life. It could even be described as a nightmare. Whoosh! Yi Xingqian calmed down and looked toward the north. He thought to himself, Taishan elder, since you left behind such a fortuitous opportunity for the younger generation, why did you leave behind such a terrifying trap? He looked in the direction of the ancient warship. It was flying to the end of Lu province in the northeast and merging into the Endless Sea. The Starfall continent had the East Sea, West Sea, and South Sea. Naturally, there was the North Sea. Jun Changshao and Lu Qianqian were currently in the North Sea. The place they were heading toward was the abode left behind by the Taishan elder. Unlike the other three seas, which each had a province, the North Sea did not have a complete continent. After the War of Emperors, the stars were densely covered with small islands. Are you sure the abode of the Taishan elder is in the North Sea? Jun Changshao asked. Lu Qianqian silently took out a yellowed manual with the words, Taishan Ice Heart Arts, and placed it on the table. She said, the last few pages have detailed records. This is the original? Correct. Jun Changshao said in surprise, this should be the ultimate treasure of the Taishan Xingzone. How did it end up in your hands? The Grand Elder gave it to me. Lu Qianqian said, she said that only I can perfectly comprehend the manual. Jun Changshao crossed his arms and said, I'm very curious now. Was it because of Fang Lingyu that you were expelled, or was there some other hidden reason? Because she didn't have any hidden reasons. Really? Really? Jun Changshao took the manual and flipped to the last few pages without looking at the incantations. He said, is it because I said earlier that I don't consider myself a disciple of the sect of all times that you took out the manual? Lu Qianqian was silent. After reading the detailed records of the abode's location, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, you've cultivated this kind of mental cultivation method and turned your brain into a block of ice. Some of the things you do are easily misunderstood by others. I don't care about being misunderstood. Lu Qianqian said. What else could Jun Changshao say? The system complained, the first disciple has always held the bottom line for the sect. Otherwise, under the host's guidance, the sect of all times would have become the true sand sculpture sect of all times. Chapter 1279. Interstellar Fortress. The Z envoy and the ugly envoy stood with their heads lowered because the fortress master had just come out of seclusion. Trash. A bunch of trash. After brewing his emotions for half a day, this big shot whose face couldn't be seen finally exploded. He had gone into seclusion to recuperate because of the backlash, but when he came out, the 9 main culprits of the 9 levels of hell had all escaped. Master. The Z envoy said, I'll take all the responsibility. As the boss of the 9 levels of hell, he couldn't escape the blame. The fortress master said coldly, we must capture all the main culprits as soon as possible. I've already sent people to investigate. The Z envoy said with a serious expression, we'll have news soon. The escape of the main culprits was a big deal. He directly mobilized almost all the elites of the interstellar fortress to search the mortal universe. Unless the culprits ascended, they would find them sooner or later. There's also the falling star continent. The fortress master said, we can use this chance to investigate. Because he was injured, he had to put this matter on hold. Now, he could use the elites to investigate who killed the Enforcer General. Yes. The Z envoy ordered. The fortress master left. After he left, everyone felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. Everyone. The Z envoy said seriously, Master is very angry. We must capture the culprits as soon as possible. As for the falling star continent, let's put it aside for now. There was a priority to everything. In his opinion, capturing the main culprits was more important than finding the Enforcer General's murderer. Swish! Swish! Interstellar warships flew out of the fortress. The cultivators in the city were all very surprised. Just what had happened that would cause the fortress to repeatedly dispatch such a large number of people? Falling star continent, North Sea. The ancient warship floated in the sky. The sea below was covered with many islands. At first glance, it looked like a constellation in the sky. It should be here. Standing on the deck, Jun Changshao took out the Taishan Ice Heart secret manual and compared it with the introduction. His eyes were filled with certainty. So, The system complained, "You don't plan to return the first half to me?" Whoosh whoosh. The ancient warship slowly descended and landed on the beach of a small island. Jun Changxiao's spiritual sense covered the island and said, "No one has been here for a long time." Lu Qianqian said cautiously, "There are many powerful spirit beasts here." "Yes." Jun Changxiao rubbed his hands, his eyes shining. "They're all martial arts resources." Roar! In the forest of the island. Jun Changxiao stood in place, still happily tasting the wild fruit he had just picked. With a flash of cold light, the beast's head flew off. Lu Qianqian withdrew her sword and landed in front of the sect leader. After breaking through to the martial sage realm, her strength had increased significantly. She had encountered many spirit beasts earlier, but they were all killed by her sword on the spot. Lu Qianqian walked to the beast's corpse and skillfully took out the crystal core with her sword. Then, she threw it to Jun Changxiao and said, "Patriarch, there doesn't seem to be a cave here. We have to find them one by one." The islands in this sea area had existed since ancient times, and there were hundreds of them. It would take some time to find the cave where the Taishan elder was in seclusion. However, in the past few days, the two of them had searched dozens of places, and even dug 3 feet into the ground, but there were still no clues. Jun Changxiao sat on a rock and carefully flipped through the last few pages of the secret manual. He held his chin and said, "Could it be that there is an isolation array?" Patriarch. At this moment, Lu Qianqian pointed to the sea and said, "Look." Jun Changxiao looked up and found that in the distant sea area, a wave gushed out like a spring and rushed into the sky. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Several waves appeared in other directions. They were separated by a certain distance and seemed to contain some kind of mystery. "Let's go up and take a look." Jun Changxiao and Lu Qianqian flew up. The two of them looked down and found that there were a total of 9 water pillars near the sea area, and a lone island was shrouded in them. "Let's go." Whoosh! 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 The two of them cut through the sky and flew past the 2 water pillars. But just as they were about to approach the island, the surrounding heaven and earth attributes suddenly stirred and then converged into 2 palm prints. Boom! Boom! Jun Changxiao drew his left and right hands at the same time, breaking the pressure of the energy. He looked at the cold woman in front of him and said speechlessly, "Am I so weak that I need a disciple to block the blade?" Lu Qianqian moved aside. The 2 palm prints appeared too suddenly. She didn't think much and stood in front of the patriarch, preparing to freeze and then shatter, but she was not as fast as the other party. "Let's go." Jun Changxiao was the first to fly over, but he ended up crashing into the invisible barrier with a bang. His entire handsome face caved in. Damn! How could there be an array? Go Sheng had been releasing his spiritual senses the whole time, but he didn't catch any aura of the array at all. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, the heaven and earth attributes became more restless and then converged into palm prints that pressed down from all directions. Yi Xingchen sat cross-legged in the room. He remembered that he had bombarded the barrier for several hours before he broke the barrier that enveloped the island in the soaring 9 springs. What a scam! Night Emperor shook his head bitterly. As one of the 10 great martial emperors, he had almost exhausted all his strength to break the outer barrier defense. If this spread out, luckily, it's me. Yi Xingchen comforted himself. If it were someone else, they definitely wouldn't be able to break it. Boom! Jun Changxiao, who was in the soaring 9 springs, used his powerful ability to break the barrier on the spot. It took him 1 minute to break the barrier. As for the various palm prints pressing down on him, they were all dealt with in the time he took to break the barrier. As a result, Lu Qianqian, who was responsible for protecting him, was in a passive state the whole time. Yi Xingchen was still thinking about the past. He remembered that after breaking the barrier, he landed on the island shrouded by the 9 springs and was besieged by hundreds of huge creatures made of sand. It took him a Herculean effort to deal with them. Those creatures are extremely powerful. Only I could destroy them after expending a lot of energy. If it were the Spirit Emperor and the others, they would have died long ago. Night Emperor's eyes were filled with pride. However, he didn't know that Jun Changshao had landed on the island and was leading Lu Qianqian deeper into the island. The hundreds of huge creatures that appeared had already been beaten back into sand. It still took him 1 minute. That door. Yi Xingqian's expression suddenly turned serious. He clearly remembered that when he entered the inner area from the beach and walked to the central area, he saw an ancient stone door covered in vines. There were strange words engraved on it, and it exuded an unfathomable aura. The first 2 dangers were dealt with by force. However, Night Emperor was worried about how to open this door. He paced back and forth for a few days before it suddenly opened by itself. So, Night Emperor thought to himself, I went early back then. In fact, I could have waited a few more days for the Soaring 9 Springs phenomenon to weaken. Then, I could have easily entered the inner area. If someone didn't know this law, they would have died in vain. Boom! At this moment, Jun Changshao, who was also in front of the stone door, raised the glowing Taishan Ice Heart secret manual. The seemingly indestructible door gradually opened. He said with a surprised look, it's that simple. Yi Xingqian touched his face subconsciously and said in confusion, why does it hurt a little? Chapter 1280. Night Emperor had been to the North Sea in his previous life and entered the cave of the Taishan Old Man. After experiencing all kinds of hardships, he obtained the Taishan Bible. That was definitely a difficult past to look back on, and it even brought about a psychological shadow. However, today, thousands of years later, Jun Changshao brought Lu Qianqian to the place he had been to before. Facing the same crisis, it was easily resolved. Fortunately, Yi Xingqian did not follow, otherwise, he would definitely vomit blood on the spot. Although he did not want to admit it, the fact was that only Jun Changshao, who was Wuxing's great perfection realm, was stronger than Yi Xingqian. The various restrictions left by the Taishan Old Man could hardly bring him trouble. Even the closed door of the cave, because of the Taishan Ice Heart technique, did not need to be forcefully cracked, and did not need to wait for time to enter. The system roared, he's just here to play. Jun Changshao not only slapped on Yo's face, but also its face. After all, it had previously asked the other party to take it seriously. Lu Qianqian, who was walking in the dark tunnel, did not speak, but looking at the back of the person walking in front, she could not help but think, how strong is the patriarch? If it were her, she would not be able to contend with the 2 groups of obstacles outside, but in front of Jun Changshao, it was not worth mentioning. Boom! Snake-like spirit beasts in the tunnel rushed in, but they were directly obliterated by a punch. Jun Changshao took the crystal core and smiled, this place is dangerous for you, but it is not dangerous for me. Lu Qianqian was silent. Ho ho. Ho ho. At this moment, more snake beasts rushed in from the inside, and the number was so large that it felt like entering a snake's nest. Ta! Jun Changshao took a step forward, opened his hands to both sides, stretched his head forward, and spat out billowing flames. Ho ho! The hot flames rushed along the tunnel, and the attacking snake beasts were all burned into nothingness. Lu Qianqian's eyes were filled with shock. The patriarch's flames were much stronger and purer than before. Was this considered very strong? One had to know that Go Sheng did not even use the fire spirit. Don't just stand there. Jun Changshao said, hurry up and pick up the cores. Lu Qianqian came back to her senses and collected the crystal nuclei that were scattered all over the ground. She was still thinking about the fire-spitting scene just now. Ice elementalists were more sensitive to fire elementalists because each of them countered the other. In the past, Jun Changshao's flames had completely suppressed Lu Qianqian's flames. Now, they were still suppressing her, and the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. After the snake beasts were dealt with, there were no other dangers. The 2 of them walked for a few minutes until they reached the end of the tunnel. They stopped in front of a cliff, and there was only a suspension bridge connecting them to the other side. Roar! The angry roars of ferocious beasts could be heard from below, and extremely violent waves of air blew over. Patriarch. Lu Qianqian frowned and said, "This bridge may be dangerous, come over quickly." Jun Changshao stood at the other end of the bridge and shouted. Although Lu Qianqian was expressionless, her heart had already collapsed. Swoosh! She tiptoed and walked along the suspension bridge. The hair-raising aura below was even more intense. Roar! Suddenly, 3 huge snake beasts rushed out from the bottom of the cliff that was like a dark hell. Their faces were ferocious and they were roaring. Yi Xingqian, who was in the sect of all times, recalled the scene when he came to the cliff and fought with the 3-headed snake beasts. He said with lingering fear, "Who would have thought that the extinct ancient 3-headed snake would be in the abode of the old man from Taishan? Although I didn't win. But they can't do anything to me." From Night Emperor's words, it wasn't hard to tell that the trip to the old man's abode of Taishan was always a win. After all, he had to save face. After all, he was beaten to a pulp and only barely managed to cross the suspension bridge. He couldn't tell anyone about this. When Lu Qianqian crossed the bridge again, she was already rooted to the spot. Jun Changshao had appeared below at some point, and evil energy even more powerful than evil energy appeared on his right hand. He placed it on the head of one of the snake beasts and said, "Be obedient." The 3-headed snake beasts were terrified. The aura emanating from this human's palm carried an evil aura that caused their minds to tremble. They were extremely fearful. Whoosh! At this moment, a 3-year-old child appeared from the evil energy and said with a burning gaze, "Dad, can I eat them?" "Yes." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Little Xia released a majestic evil energy that instantly enveloped the 3-headed snake. Roar! A miserable cry sounded. Whoosh! After a while, the evil energy returned to little Xia's body. The originally huge and ferocious 3-headed snake had been reduced to a bag of bones. The evil energy in its body and the energy in its core had all been absorbed. The ancient snake beast that had caused so much trouble for Night Emperor had become a tonic just like that. Because of its ugly appearance, Jun Changshao wasn't interested in making it a contract beast. Lu Qianqian was stunned. She wasn't stunned because the vicious beast had been taken care of. She was stunned because a child had suddenly appeared and called the patriarch Dad. "There's no danger. Let's go," Jun Changshao said. Lu Qianqian walked along the suspension bridge to the other end and thought to herself, "So the patriarch has a child with her." Although she was shocked, she was still able to maintain absolute calm. If it were Su Xiaoma, he would have jumped up already. "Dad!" After digesting the evil energy, little Xia patted her little belly and looked at Lu Qianqian with a smile. "Is this my mother?" Boom! The cliff wall shook and the little guy's head caved in. There was a tunnel at the other end of the cliff. Because of the eerie evil energy that occasionally blew out from within, Jun Changshao brought little Xia with him. The little guy became obedient. He would occasionally glance at Lu Qianqian and think to himself, "If she's not my mother, then who is?" After a short while, the 3 of them arrived at the end of the tunnel. They found themselves in a stone cave that was several dozen square meters in size. There were stone chairs, stone tables, and stone cabinets for storing items. "Dad!" Little Xia pointed at the wall in front of them. "There are words." Jun Changshao looked over and saw the words, "Night Emperor was here," carved into the smooth stone wall. Since the late Night Emperor was here, it means that this is really the cave abode of the Taishan Elder. Jun Changshao learned from the 9 Taishan emperors that the Night Emperor obtained the Taishan Bible before his death. This and the Taishan Ice Heart art were both created by the Taishan Elder. Now that the guy with the grass on his grave left his handwriting here, it was enough to prove that he had found the right place. Judging from the slightly messy handwriting, Lu Qianqian analyzed. This person, who was once one of the 10 great martial emperors, must have paid an extremely high price to get here. "Yeah," Jun Changshao said, "just the defensive barrier outside and the sandmen that we encountered. If it were the Spirit Emperor and the others, they would have been defeated long ago." The fact that the Night Emperor was able to get here shows that he is quite capable. What a pity. He shook his head and said, such a powerful person was defeated by a woman and even helped her ascend to the upper realm. Whoosh! Suddenly, the ground in the empty area in front of them suddenly cracked. Then, 3 stone platforms slowly appeared. 3 exquisite boxes were placed on each platform. 2 of them were open, and the last one was tightly shut. I have left 3 types of opportunities in the cave abode. Those who enter can choose one of them. An old voice that seemed to be able to pierce through the void sounded. Chapter 1281. Jun Changxiao's expression turned solemn. The voice that suddenly sounded could penetrate the soul and shake the soul. Very strong. Jun Changxiao said to himself, very strong. Whether it was the patrol envoy or the Dark Demon King, they did not give him much pressure. Now, just the voice alone made him feel pressured. Could it be the Taishan Elder? The system said, the martial emperors who fought against the soul race in ancient times were very strong, right? But they were only respected as top powerhouses by later generations. Only the Taishan Elder was called a legend. This is enough to show how big the gap between them is. Swoosh! Jun Changxiao cupped his hands and said respectfully, it is one of the biggest regrets of my life to not be able to live in your era and see your face. Kid! The deep voice that penetrated the soul sounded again, if you ascend to the upper realm, we will meet again. Jun Changxiao was dumbfounded. He knew that there was a formation in the cave, and the voice was left in advance. It would be triggered when someone came in, but it actually replied to him. I left a trace of spiritual thought in the cave. Although I have transcended the mortal world, I can still maintain contact with this place. The deep voice said. Jun Changxiao's eyes widened. Even the usually calm Lu Qianqian was dumbfounded. Leaving a trace of spiritual thought in the cave and being able to communicate with the person who came in, what did it mean? It meant that he could speak to a legend. Fuck. Fuck. Jun Changxiao showed his uncultured characteristics incisively and hurriedly cupped his hands. Senior, do you have some treasure that you need to tell me personally? He had watched many TV dramas. As long as there was a powerful person who appeared in the form of voice or video, he would definitely teach the male lead a peerless secret technique. The old voice said, no. Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes. If there was nothing left, what was the use of a voice call? The Taishan Elder said, you are the most powerful and talented among the 3 fated people who entered the cave, so I have high hopes for you. I also hope to meet you in the upper realm in the future. Senior, you flatter me. Jun Changxiao said humbly. Of course. The Taishan old man continued, if one day you ascend to the upper realm, you can come to Fengqi Celestial Mountain to look for me. Senior, are you going to protect me? Jun Changxiao asked. The Taishan old man said, this old man has ascended to the upper realm for a long time. I've barely made a name for myself. It shouldn't be a problem to protect someone like you who has just ascended. Jun Changxiao cupped his hands and said, if I ascend to the upper realm in the future, I will definitely look for you. Although he could tell that the legendary battle pet warrior was bragging, he was still grateful that the legendary battle pet warrior had protected him because they were both from the falling star continent. Baby. The Taishan old man said, I hope you won't make this old man wait too long. The last few words gradually faded, indicating that the other party had turned off the voice call. After all, there was a data limit between the upper realm and the lower realm. He left. Jun Changxiao looked disappointed. Lu Qianqian said, if the Taishan seniors knew about the patriarch's death-seeking personality, they definitely wouldn't want you to look for him. Why? I'm afraid you'll be implicated. Jun Changxiao was speechless. Qianqian, you think too much of me. Lu Qianqian didn't say anything. It's not a thought, it's a fact. If the patriarch ascends to the upper realm, I can already imagine how the Taishan seniors would cry and beg you not to look for him. Jun Changxiao looked at the only unopened box and said, Could it be that the second half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique is hidden? It should be. Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changshao said, the first two fated people were the founder of the Taishan Shengzong and the Late Night Emperor. The former obtained the first half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique, while the latter obtained the Taishan Sutra. Lu Qianqian had already walked over. Don't move. Jun Changshao stopped her and said, be careful of traps. Lu Qianqian stopped in front of the stone table and said, Patriarch, I heard from the Grand Elder that only those with the Taishan Ice Heart physique can open the box of the Taishan Ice Heart technique. Oh? Jun Changshao had also walked over. His spiritual sense permeated the exquisite box, and he immediately felt an extremely cold aura, so he said, then give it a try. Lu Qianqian raised her hand and placed it on the box. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, an extremely cold aura emerged, and then extended from her finger to her palm, and quickly froze it. Jun Changshao said in shock, stop. It was too late. The cold aura had already spread from her finger. Not only could Lu Qianqian not withdraw her hand, but her right palm was also completely frozen. The cold aura even entered her body first, causing her to frown. As a professional ice cultivator, she was unexpectedly disturbed by an external ice element. It was enough to show how terrifying the cold aura in the box was. Ka ka ka. Ka 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 ka. The freezing aura spread all the way, and half of Lu Qianqian's arm was frozen. She couldn't stop the cold aura from spreading, and she couldn't break free. She could only endure the pain of the cold and raise her left hand to push the patriarch away, so that he wouldn't be affected. Pa! Jun Changshao grabbed her wrist first and said, this pure ice energy, can you absorb it for your own use? Lu Qianqian was stunned. Pa! At this moment, Jun Changshao grabbed her frozen right wrist with his other hand and said, I'll help you suppress the cold aura, you refine them all. Lu Qianqian was speechless. The cold aura emerging from the box was too terrifying. She, a Wuxing level ice cultivator, couldn't even withstand it, so how could she refine it? Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a scorching flame erupted, dispelling the cold aura that permeated the cave, and Lu Qianqian's almond-shaped eyes widened. Because the flame released by the patriarch this time was even stronger than before. Drip, drip. The ice on her wrist melted, and then turned into water droplets that splashed down. Refine. Jun Changshao said. Lu Qianqian hurriedly suppressed her shock and took the initiative to absorb the cold aura suppressed by the patriarch's domineering flame. It was strange. The spirit of the fire spirit could obviously suppress the cold aura, but the other party still surged up along her fingers, completely unafraid of death. If it was the original strength, not only would Lu Qianqian be unable to absorb it, but she would also be frozen long ago. Now, under the tempering of the flame, the attribute changed from ice to freshness mode, and it was the best time to consume and refine it. Therefore, the scene that appeared was Jun Changshao holding the eldest disciple's wrist and using the scorching flame to help offset part of the cold aura. Standing in the distance, little Xia covered her eyes and muttered, not suitable for children, not suitable for children. 2 hours later. All the cold aura that gushed out was absorbed, and Lu Qianqian sat down cross-legged. At this moment, she was controlling the cold aura gathered in her dantian, and gradually condensing it into an ice core with the Taishan Ice Heart technique. Obviously, the cold aura in the box was some kind of high-level ice attribute. As long as it was completely integrated, there would be another kind of ice seed. Lu Qianqian divided her attention to look at Jun Changshao, and a trace of melancholy flashed in her clear eyes. Grand Elder. She secretly said, I'm afraid I can't be as calm as still water in this life. Pa! Creak! Standing in front of the stone platform, Jun Changshao's fingers gently moved, and the box slowly opened. Inside was a yellowed manual with the words, Taishan Ice Heart Technique Second Half written on the leather surface. You found it? Taking it out, he shook his head and said, it's not difficult at all. Chapter 1282. He thought it would be difficult, but after killing a bunch of Sandman snake beasts, he got the second half of Taishuan's Ice Heart formula. The whole process was too easy. He could not let Anyo know, or it would hurt his pride. Because Lu Qianqian was still refining the ice element, Jun Changshao took the secret manual and sat on the stone bench, reading it first. He was not interested in the mantra, so when he flipped to the last few pages, he found the layout of the array. It was introduced as the Heaven and Earth Creation Array. There really is one. Jun Changshao's eyes lit up. As long as he could set up this array that ignored the realm of ascension, he would not have to worry about breaking through the void. As long as he was happy, he could go on a trip whenever he wanted. However, the array was very complicated. Jun Changshao looked at it for a while and felt dizzy. Forget it. I'll read the introduction. He turned his attention to the text introduction of the array. After reading it, he realized that this array not only needed the conventional array, but also the 5 elements or treasures to support it. I have the 5 elements body, so it's not a big problem. What Jun Changshao was struggling with now was how to set up the array and how to teleport to the upper realm without being discovered by the Starry Sky Fortress. Why should I be afraid of being discovered? He smiled and said, if I really want to ascend one day, can't I just destroy the fortress that is in my way? If this idea was heard by the masters of the mortal universe, they would definitely give him a thumbs up and say, Jun Patriarch, you're awesome. Jun Changshao did not have the intention to ascend, and he could not set up the array. So he put the second half of the book into the space ring and started to walk around the cave. Senior Taishuan's cave should have more than 3 boxes, right? Wait. Jun Changshao thought of something. He came to the stone platform and forcibly put the exquisitely crafted box into the space ring. He said, let Master Fan see how the material is. Maybe he can break it down and make equipment. Because the 3 opportunities had been taken away, the array that connected the box to the stone platform had lost its function. Lu Qianqian sat cross-legged on the ground, still refining her ice attribute. Jun Changshao began to stroll around the cave until he saw the words Night Emperor was here written on the stone wall. He immediately spat and said, Bah, Martial Emperor, you have no manners at all. The system roared, you have quality. Clang! Jun Changshao took out his jade dragon asks the heaven sword. He first erased the word Yi, then carved the word Jun on it. Only then did he nod his head in satisfaction and said, just take it as a souvenir. The system was speechless. Just a moment ago, he was still criticizing Night Emperor for his lack of manners. Now, he was spitting and destroying public facilities. As expected of Jun Gobiao. 4 hours later. Lu Qianqian finally stood up. The cold aura around her was even stronger than before. It could be seen that the ice seed extracted from the box had improved her overall strength by quite a bit. Let's go. Jun Changshao said, let's return to the sect. He looked depressed because he had wandered around the cave for a long time, but in the end, he found nothing. The legendary battle pet warriors of the Starfall continent were really stingy. Thank you. Lu Qianqian whispered. What did you just say? I didn't hear you. Jun Changshao tilted his head and said. Lu Qianqian was silent for a moment, then bowed her head and said, thank you, Patriarch, for helping this disciple to refine the ice attribute. Jun Changshao stopped and looked at her with a serious expression, saying, what I need is not thanks. What I need is that you can bear the responsibility of being the eldest disciple. This disciple understands. Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changshao was a little surprised. This woman clearly looked colder than before, but her tone was warmer than before. Let's go. The 3 of them went back the way they came. When they reached the stone door, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, Senior Taishian, you left behind only 3 boxes in such a big cave. Since you're so stingy, don't blame this junior for tearing down the door. Whoosh! 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 Green Dragon Crescent Blade, Jade Dragon asks the Heaven Sword, and all kinds of other weapons were brought out. He skillfully and nimbly tore down the 2 ancient stone doors. Lu Qianqian was speechless. Only the patriarch would tear down the door after obtaining the fortuitous encounter left behind by others. The Taishan old man. Did you see that? If you dare to protect such a person, you'll have to wipe his ass every day. Actually, it couldn't be said that Jun Changshao was too shameless. After all, the 3 fortuitous encounters had been taken away, and the Taishan cave had completed its mission. There was no need for it to exist anymore. Wouldn't it be better to tear down the stone door and use it to refine equipment? Whoosh! The ancient warship dragged a streak of light and merged with the sky and the sea. Jun Changshao took out the second half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique. Then, he took out a pen and paper and engraved the formation diagram. Only then did he pass the first half of the technique to Lu Qianqian. He had no interest in learning this kind of ice-type mental cultivation technique. Patriarch, after I memorize the second half of the technique, I can place the Taishan Ice Heart technique in the technique pavilion for my junior brothers to cultivate, Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changshao said, I'm very gratified that you can think this way. However, Lu Qianqian added, it requires a specific ice-type physique to cultivate. Otherwise, it will backfire. A top-notch sect doesn't just exist for tens or hundreds of years. It will exist for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. During this long period of time, generations of outstanding disciples will emerge. Therefore, our ancestors can leave all kinds of martial arts for them to inherit, Jun Changshao said. Lu Qianqian said, Patriarch thinks very far. As the leader of a sect, your vision must be far-sighted. Jun Changshao turned around and said jokingly, now, do you still want to meddle with my patriarch's position? When Lu Qianqian first joined the sect of all times, she once said that it would be better to pass the position of sect leader to her. In fact, she had already approved of him after the sect competition. I still need to develop the sect and rely on you disciples to make the Iron Bone sect famous in the continent. How can I be lazy? This was what Jun Changshao said. Today, when Lu Qianqian thought about it again, she understood that he wasn't lying or joking. In just a few years, he really turned a nameless sect into the strongest sect in the continent. Qianqian. Jun Changshao, who was standing at the bow of the ship, put his hands behind his back and looked up at the sky. He said heroically, this is just the beginning. There is still a sea of stars waiting for us to conquer. Li Qingyang wasn't here. Xiao Ziji wasn't here. Page wasn't here either. Otherwise, one sentence from the patriarch would definitely make one's blood boil. However, Lu Qianqian was beside him. She responded with an "oh," which didn't make the scene that was supposed to explode. Instead, she pulled the atmosphere down to the lowest point. At the beginning of the month, the sect of all times was recruiting disciples as usual. Because the patriarch reminded them in advance, the Ning brothers lowered the requirements. Therefore, after a few rounds of screening, at least 5,000 new disciples were recruited. This was the highest number of recruits in recent years. We're still short of 10,000. Jun Changshao, who was on an island in the North Sea, heard that the number of people had reached 90,000. A smile appeared on his face. Grandpa. The bandit leader, who had been trampled under his feet and made a living by killing people and robbing people, begged with fear in his eyes, please. Please let me go. Whoosh! The blade flashed, and a head rolled. Jun Changshao put away the green dragon crescent blade and said, let's go. Whoosh whoosh. The ancient warship set sail again. The bandit stronghold that had occupied the island for decades and robbed and killed innocent people was burned to ashes by the fire. Chapter 1283. Sect of All Times. After the Ning brothers recruited new disciples, Jun Changshao brought Lu Qianqian back from the North Sea. They didn't gain much from this trip. The only valuable things were the second half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique and the formations recorded in it. As for robbing the bandits, they only earned a small amount of money. Patriarch Li Qingyang came to see him. There are more and more disciples now. Many of the sect's facilities can't support them. It's fine. Jun Changshao said, I've already prepared a lot. He bought a few 9 transformation spirit cleansing pills from the epic quest reward before heading to the North Sea. He spent the rest on the sect's facilities. Li Qingyang left with the various facilities. Jun Changshao began to think about how to complete Shirsan's quest. First, he needed to recruit 100,000 disciples and become a first-rate sect. There was a fixed number of disciples and their strength had to meet the requirements, so it was easy to complete. Second, he needed to gain the recognition of the various sects and top experts of the Falling Star continent. This was more difficult because there was no hard standard. Who knew if he could complete it? It's simple. Jun Changshao interlocked his fingers and said, pick an auspicious day and hold a martial arts convention in the Falling Star continent. Invite all the forces and top experts to participate and let them elect me as the Martial Arts Alliance leader. That's a good idea, but the system said, a martial arts convention can't be held just because you want to. Many sects must jointly announce it. It's not a big problem. Jun Changshao stood up and said, I'll go to the Taishan Shengzong now. Taishan Shengzong. Jun Changshao sat on a chair in the main hall as a VIP and explained his purpose. This, acting Patriarch Yu Linyun said in shock, why does Jun Patriarch want to hold a martial arts convention? Jun Changshao said, to elect me as the alliance leader. The mouths of Yu Linyun, Xia Tie, and the other higher-ups twitched. Everyone wanted to be the boss of a plane, but Jun Changshao was so direct and straightforward. He was not tactful at all. This was the first time he had seen someone like that. You can't. Sure. Yu Linyun hesitated for a moment, then said, but we still need to obtain the agreement of the other first-rate sects, and then announce it together. Your esteemed sect only needs to agree. Leave the rest to me, Jun Changshao said. At this point, Yu Linyun had no choice but to agree. She said, Jun Patriarch, when will the martial arts convention be held? 2 months later. Goodbye. Jun Changshao gave the time and arrived at the Radiant Light Sacred Sect. He stood on the martial stage and stated his intentions. Looking at the Patriarch and the upper echelons in front of the hall, he said indifferently, I'm done speaking. Who agrees and who disagrees? Because of the relationship between Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun, he was more polite when he went to the Taishan Shengzong. When he came to the other sects, he revealed his true colors. This kind of attitude of beating up whoever opposed made the Patriarch of the Radiant Light Sacred Sect say, I agree. As a result, in a short period of time, Jun Changshao visited all the first-rate sects, and the answer was that they all agreed. No one dared to object. World-defying sacred sect, martial arts practice field. Ao Wushuang, who had just started cultivating, stood with trembling legs. Because Jun Changshao was standing beside him, the aura he emitted made him feel fear. I agree. The Patriarch in front of the hall hurriedly said. Jun Changshao's serious face was replaced by a smile. He patted Ao Wushuang's shoulder and said, to be able to stand up again from a setback, you're pretty good. The once arrogant young Patriarch, who was later tyrannical by Yixingchen, didn't even dare to breathe in front of Go Sheng. It was only after the other party left that he powerlessly collapsed to the ground. Father! Ao Wushuang's 10 fingers fiercely dug into the stone floor. He raised his head with difficulty and roared with tears in his eyes, can I participate in the Sect of All Times' examination? When he was recuperating, he had thought about it a lot. Later on, he understood that he lost to Yixingchen not because of his aptitude or cultivation, but because he had a good patriarch and he didn't. Not willing. Until today, when Jun Changshao appeared, until he felt that he was insignificant, he finally decided to participate in the Sect of All Times' examination. My son. The patriarch said solemnly, you will lose your status as a young patriarch and lose everything you have. I don't care. Ao Wushuang cried and shouted, I just want to become stronger. The patriarch was silent for a moment, then he swallowed his dantian and said, Jun Patriarch, can my son participate in your sect's recruitment examination? Patriarch Ao. Jun Changxiao's voice came from the sky. Regardless of whether you are a member of the royal family or a commoner, you can participate in the Sect of All Times' examination. The prerequisite is that you pass. Thank you, Jun Patriarch. Ao Wushuang stood up with difficulty and clenched his fists, saying, I will go to southwest Yangzhou now. Jun Changxiao didn't reply because he had already flown far away. Because Ao Wushuang cultivated the sect's mental cultivation technique, he was arrogant. However, he was still very young. After all, he had only become enemies with the Sect of All Times because of the Battle of Dragons and Tigers. He hadn't committed any major mistakes, so he was qualified to participate in the Sect of All Times' entrance examination. Jun Changxiao couldn't just accept all of these people who had joined the sect and were already very strong. He would definitely set up a more difficult moral, intellectual, and aesthetic test. Some people were allowed to participate in the examination, but some weren't. For example, Murong Xian from the Lily Holy Sect because she had hurt Xiao Ziji. Of course, she wouldn't participate because she had a different status from Ao Wushuang. A few days later, after the news of the 9 Thearch's return gradually died down, another shocking piece of news spread. 2 months later, the continent would hold the highest standard martial alliance conference in history. The venue would be the Sect of All Times. As long as one was from a sect, as long as one was from a clan, as long as one was from an organization, regardless of cultivation level, they could participate. They only needed to provide proof of identity. Big news! Big news! Martial artists from all walks of life fought to discuss the news. This so-called Martial Alliance Conference is led by the Patriarch of the Sect of All Times. Not only are there sects and clans, but there are also famous rogue cultivators. Oh my god! All the reputable people in the continent are going. It's definitely going to be a big event. Just as the martial artists were discussing, the formation masters from all the cities were actively repairing the projection array because the Martial Alliance Conference in 2 months would be broadcasted live. How big was the scale? The cities and towns that were a grade lower than the cities were also starting to build projection arrays. When the time came, they had to cover the entire continent. In order to complete the epic mission, Jun Changxiao was going to play a Martial Alliance conference that would go down in history. Of course. The Evil Sect and Evil Sect were also invited. Even the Demon Emperor's Gate Sect Master had received the invitation and was considering whether to go or not. Go! If you don't go, you'll be in trouble. The Deicide Temple and Demon Fiend Sect that were invited also started to prepare. As for the sects, clans, organizations, and rogue cultivators that received the Martial Alliance Conference invitation, they also started to become active. Miaohua Palace. Zhangsun Fanghua held the invitation and said with a conflicted expression, should we tell the palace master? Ever since attending Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyan's engagement, Shi Jingxian returned to the sect and went into seclusion. She had yet to come out even now. There are still 2 months before the conference begins. We'll see how it goes, Lin Xingyue said. Alright. Actually, the upper echelons of Miaohua Palace all knew that the palace master went into seclusion because she hoped to become stronger. However, the gap between her and the person she cared about was getting wider and wider. There was no helping it. Who could compare to a hack? Chapter 1284. Invitations to the Martial Alliance Conference were being sent to the various provinces and cities. The scale of the conference and the number of invitations received could be said to be unprecedented. It seemed to be jointly issued by all the major sects, but in fact, it was because of the Sect of All Times and Jun Changxiao that they decided to go. After all, this man had made the 9 great martial emperors thank him in the sky. They could ignore others, but they had to respect him. Even being invited was a supreme honor. To be honest, Jun Changxiao's current prestige was not inferior to the 9 great martial emperors. However, while the world was discussing the Martial Alliance Conference, Go Sheng was already on his way to the southern sea crossing state. Don't misunderstand. He was just there to deliver the invitations. After all, the three overseas states and the mainland had the same roots. Naturally, he wanted them to participate. He had no other intentions. Couldn't he leave this matter to the sect's higher-ups? Did he have to do it personally? He had no choice. The ancient warship was fast. Moreover, they needed time to travel from the southern sea crossing state to the mainland. They might not be able to make it in 2 months. Therefore, Jun Changshao decided to pick them up personally. This was definitely an extremely high treatment. If it was a mainland martial artist, they would not be able to enjoy it. Southern Sea Crossing State. Qixing Palace. The ancient warship stopped steadily at the martial arts arena. The surrounding disciples all widened their eyes and were shocked. A ship, it could fly. This was not the main point. The main point was that Jun Changshao smiled and said, "Palace Master Qiu, are you touched that I personally came to pick you up on a ship?" The Qixing Palace Master, who had the green dragon crescent blade on his neck, had an ugly expression. He was touched, but he did not dare to move. At the edge of the martial arts arena, the 7 grand elders all fell to the ground in pain, holding their stomachs. Obviously, they had a conflict with Go Sheng and were beaten up. They could not be blamed. The main reason was that Jun Changshao came to the Qixing Palace and directly asked the palace master to go to the mainland. Anyone with a temper and courage would not be able to resist. Therefore, the 7-person formation was instantly broken. The disciples of the sect of all times had shown them what true strength was. The patriarch of the sect of all times had shown them what true invincibility was. The formation that he was so proud of was not only broken, but also his temper and unyielding character. After all, those things could not be eaten with rice. "Please." Jun Changshao withdrew his saber and said indifferently. "AI." Palace head Qiu sighed and walked towards the warship. "Of course." Just as he boarded the ship, Jun Changshao added, "You don't have to pay for my journey here, but you'll have to pay for my departure. 100,000 spirit stones per person. Since this is a small business, no bargaining is allowed." Palace head Qiu's mouth twitched violently. This guy must be here to blackmail my Qixing Palace. He couldn't say that. After all, the ship also consumed energy, and it was only right to charge for it. Although it was a little expensive, it was worth it to reach the continent so quickly. 7. Jun Changshao said, "You guys can go up as well." "Jun Patriarch, I alone am enough to represent the Qixing Palace." They. When the green dragon crescent blade was placed on his neck again, Palace head Qiu immediately changed his words. 7 grand elders, please board the ship quickly." Therefore, the palace head and 7 grand elders of the most powerful sect in the South Sea Crossing State were invited onto the ancient warship. The total fee for 8 heads was 800,000 spirit stones. My ship can accommodate at least 1,000 people. On the way to the other sects, Jun Changshao thought to himself, 100,000 per person, doesn't that mean it's over 100 million? The system said, this is a real robber. Jun Changshao would not be so greedy. He had always pursued a rational fee, so he charged according to the level of the sect. For example, those ordinary martial artists only charged 10,000 spirit stones per head. Swoosh! After circling around the South Sea Crossing State, the ancient warship carried hundreds of elders and higher-ups of various sects to the West Ocean spiritual state. What a fast speed! I never thought that I would one day cross the endless ocean on a ship in the sky. The 10,000 spirit stones are worth it. The elders of various sects gathered on the deck and looked at the vast ocean below. Feeling the extreme speed, they were all shocked. Palace head Qiu and the 7 grand elders were also shocked and even realized that the speed of the ship was much faster than their flying speed. However, they thought that it would be a great loss if they did not have any special experience after paying 100,000 spirit stones. The super performance of the ancient warship shocked the major sects in the South Sea Crossing State, and they no longer cared about the spirit stones. This was Jun Changshao's brilliance. He was clearly extorting money, but in the end, it made the people who were cheated feel that it was not a loss. West Ocean Spiritual State, Union of 10,000 Immortals. When the ancient warship once again hovered above the martial arts field, Alliance Master Han hurriedly led a group of higher-ups to welcome it. When they learned that they were going to participate in an event on the continent, they immediately agreed and even obediently handed over the spirit stones. Their familiarity and self-awareness was because Jun Changshao had been there before. As the saying went, unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second time. When Goxing went to the South Sea Crossing State again, the Qixing Palace would definitely be as enthusiastic as Alliance Master Han, and there would not be any conflict. After receiving hundreds of influential elders in the West Ocean Spirit State, the ancient warship sailed to the East Ocean's Fishery State and invited the emperors of the three empires and powerful martial artists onto the ship. There were many people, almost 3,000 of them. These martial artists represented the entire three states overseas. Everyone. On the way to the continent, Jun Changshao said seriously, because the Martial Alliance Conference will be held in 2 months, after arriving at the Sect of all times, I'll arrange for all of you to stay in Iron Bone Town at the foot of the mountain. Please take care of your own food and accommodation. Everyone's expressions became interesting. This warship was so fast that it would probably take less than a day to reach the continent. Are you purposely tricking us into spending money in that Iron Bone Town? Whoosh! The ancient warship traveled at high speed from the Sky Ocean Line and arrived at the Qingyang County of the southwest Yangzhou in a few hours. Dear guests, there's a situation inside. Auntie Wang stood at the entrance of the Yunlai Inn to welcome them. She only said after all the elders of the three states had entered, "Brat, why did you go out to get guests for me instead of taking care of the faction?" Auntie Wang. Jun Changshao said in a low voice, "These are all important figures from overseas, and they will be staying here for more than 2 months." He paused for a moment and made a gesture of rolling up money. Do you understand what I mean? If the experts from the three states who entered the inn saw this, they would be sure that this guy was purposely tricking them into spending money. Fortunately, Auntie Wang was a serious businesswoman and did not raise the price. She charged them according to the normal standard and even provided them with breakfast for free. The Iron Bone Town was now the most prosperous market in the southwest Yangzhou because it sold all kinds of high-quality resources related to martial arts. Since the experts from the three states who had lived overseas for a long time were here, they would not be cooped up in their rooms all day. Therefore, when they had nothing to do, they would walk around together until they could not control their money after entering the Tang Pharmacy. Patriarch. The next day, Yuan Feng came to report, "The people you brought are really generous. They spent tens of millions of spirit stones in the Tang Pharmacy alone yesterday." Chapter 1285. The big shots from the three overseas states were indeed rich. They could be said to be extravagant. The main reason was that the pills sold in Tangji Pill Workshop were too amazing, especially the healing pills that could quickly heal injuries. It was right to invite them in advance because it would bring a considerable profit to Iron Bone Town. It's about time. Jun Changshao lay on the chair in the study with his feet on the table and said, "Just wait for the disciples to be recruited and promoted to a first-rate sect, then hold the Martial Alliance Conference." Right. I have to inform the 9 great martial emperors. The others could choose not to come, but the 9 great martial emperors had to come because they represented the top power of the falling star continent. Jun Changshao did not go to rest and hurriedly flew out of the sect. Then, he released his spiritual senses to determine the location of the 9 great martial emperors and went to inform them one by one. Jun Patriarch, please rest assured. In a beautiful place, the Spirit Emperor, who was cultivating in a secret room, said, "When the time comes, I will definitely participate." After the other 8 great martial emperors received the news, they also expressed that they would participate and secretly said, "The place where I cultivate in seclusion is extremely hidden." How did he find it? After everything was settled, Jun Changshao returned to the sect and saw Lu Qianqian teaching a female disciple who had just entered the sect. A gratified smile appeared on his face. In fact, he had long seen that this woman had already regarded the sect as her home, but because of her personality, she always seemed out of place. This time, after going to the Taishan cave mansion, it could be said that she had changed from the inside out. Senior sister, was the one who just walked past the patriarch? Yes. Oh my god, so handsome. But why doesn't he have hair? Jun Changshao, who walked to the main hall, almost fell from the top. Then, he angrily walked to the back mountain and entered the space-time secret realm without hesitation. When he came out again, his hair had already reached his waist. A month later, under the leadership of the Ning brothers, the disciple recruitment began again. Because of the previous publicity, there were more young boys and girls participating in the assessment than before. Among them was the world-defying sacred sect's young patriarch Ao Wushuang. Of course. After he left the sect, his identity as the young patriarch was gone. Now, he was nothing more than an ordinary examinee. Sect of all times. After walking down the long stairs, Ao Wushuang stopped at the entrance of the mountain. Looking at the red gate with the plaque, the strongest sect of all time, Ao Wushuang clenched his fist and said, "I'm here. I will definitely pass the test." Ao Wushuang, young Master Ao, right? Ning Duxing called him over and said, "Because of your special identity, you need to go through a special assessment arranged by the Patriarch. Please enter the sect of all times first." Special assessment? Ao Wushuang frowned slightly, got up, walked into the sect, and stopped proudly in the martial arts arena. In front of the main hall, Jun Changshao casually placed his hands on the railing and said with a smile, "You're here? Jun Patriarch." Ao Wushuang puffed out his chest and said, "Please begin the test." After being brutally thrashed by Yi Xingqian at the Dragon Tiger battle for hegemony, he had come to realize his limits. However, his pride and arrogance still remained. They were young people after all. As long as he was not blindly self-righteous, it was normal for him to be arrogant. Jun Changshao said, "Since you can participate in the Dragon Tiger battle for hegemony, it means that you have the aptitude and cultivation. Therefore, the test will not follow the tradition, but, snap." He snapped his fingers. Stomp. Stomp. Dozens of disciples of the sect of all times walked into the martial arts arena and lined up in a row, exuding an unyielding aura. Jun Changshao said, "You can choose any three and fight 3 rounds. As long as you don't fall after 15 minutes in each round, you will pass the test." So simple. So simple. Ao Wushuang's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. Then, he looked at the group of disciples cautiously and said, "They must be very strong." They were not very strong. They only sent out Li Tiantian, Sima Zhongda, Lin Jiangheng, and other non-core disciples. Others might not know, but the readers knew that this was definitely the second strongest team of the sect of all times. No matter who that guy chose, it was destined to be a tragedy. Jun Patriarch. Ao Wushuang said solemnly, "Can I choose Yi Xingqian?" Jun Changshao said, "Why choose him?" "Because," Ao Wushuang clenched his fists and said, "I will get back up from where I fell." "Okay." Jun Changshao said loudly, "I will fulfill your request. Xingqian, come out and receive your guest." Main peak. In the martial arts arena. Yi Xingqian walked over with a cold and arrogant expression. His eyebrows were full of displeasure. He was unhappy. He was extremely unhappy. Because a piece of trash who was defeated in the Dragon Tiger battle for hegemony and whose cultivation did not improve much actually took the initiative to challenge him. Am I very weak? Am I very free? Seeing Yi Xingqian walk over, Ao Wushuang's forehead gradually became sweaty. His hands and legs were trembling, and he could not bear to look back on the past. Night Emperor had traumatized him, but why did he still want to challenge him? Because he wanted to break the barrier and get back on his feet. Come on. Ao Wushuang summoned his courage and shouted. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xingqian strode over and slammed his hand down on the other party's face. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others shook their heads helplessly. Boom! 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 The explosion sounded in the martial arts arena. Spiritual energy rippled out, blowing away the surrounding pebbles and sand. After a few minutes, Yi Xingqian finally stopped and threw Ao Wushuang to the edge of the arena as if he was throwing trash. He said calmly, "Patriarch, can I go and cultivate now?" "Go." Yi Xingqian left. Wait a minute." However, before he left the arena, Ao Wushuang's weak voice came. He struggled to stand up and said with his head covered in blood, I haven't lost yet." Li Qingyang and the others were surprised. He was beaten so badly by his junior brother, but he could still stand up. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of an explosion was heard again. Yi Xingqian appeared in front of Ao Wushuang and punched him in the abdomen. Plop! Under the powerful explosion, Ao Wushuang was blown away and fell outside the arena. He knelt on the ground in pain and vomited blood. "I lost. I still lost." Ao Wushuang leaned back with a hideous face. He was unwilling to admit defeat, but he knew that the gap between him and the guy was too big. He would be lucky if he could withstand a few attacks, let alone win. His vision suddenly darkened. Jun Changshao walked in front of him and said, "When you challenge Yi Xingqian, you have to fall from the same place you fell from." Ao Wushuang forced a smile and said, "Don't regret it, Qingyang." Jun Changshao said, "Take him to the medical peak for treatment." "Yes, sir." Li Qingyang ran over and carried the wounded Ao Wushuang on his shoulder. However, when he was about to leave, he heard the patriarch add, "Don't forget to distribute the sect's handbook and uniforms." "Understood." Li Qingyang whispered, "Junior brother, hurry up and thank the patriarch." "Thank you, Patriarch," Ao Wushuang said while suppressing his injuries. Perhaps he was in a good mood, he fainted. The recruitment for this month ended smoothly. As the requirements were lowered, there were as many as 5,000 to 6,000 new disciples. Jun Changshao first exchanged the excess contribution points for various martial arts resources, then rubbed his hands and said, "When we have 100,000 new disciples, the sect's promotion to first class and the Martial Alliance Conference can be held at the same time." The system sighed. Unknowingly, the sect has grown from one person to almost 100,000. Time passes so quickly. Yes. Jun Changshao said excitedly, "The soulbound bomb is finally going to be defused." Chapter 1286. Jun Changshao made up his mind. The sect certification and the Martial Alliance General Assembly would be held on the same day. Everyone in the continent would witness a miracle that belonged to the sect of all times. There was only a month left until that day. There were only slightly more than 3,000 disciples left. "Qingyang," Jun Changshao said, "build an open-air venue of the highest standard near the arena of life and death as soon as possible to hold the Martial Alliance General Assembly." Yes. Li Qingyang accepted the order. He led his fellow disciples and page to work. Just like that, all kinds of construction materials were transported over near the arena of life and death. The main platform, secondary platform, and spectator stands were laid out. A huge venue gradually took shape. Zhen Dejuan and his formation hall were not idle either. They were actively setting up a projection array and connected it to City Lord Han's projection array. When the time came, the sect's promotion and the Martial Alliance General Assembly would be broadcasted live from all angles. Dojo Master Yi. As soon as he sat down in the certification hall, Jun Changshao went straight to the point. 1 month later, please certify the sect of all times. Yi Tianqing, who was about to drink tea, froze. The sect of all times was certified again. Wouldn't it be first-rate then? Master Yi could no longer stay calm. He was so excited that he wanted to lie down. Fortunately, he was no longer the dojo master who would go into shock easily. Jun Changshao had shocked him too much. He could already adapt to it. However, when he thought about how he had witnessed the growth of a 9th-rate sect into a first-rate sect in just 10 years, it was definitely a great honor. Jun Patriarch. Yi Tianqing cupped his fists and said, you and your sect of all times are the legends of Southwest Yangzhou. If any martial artist in Southwest Yangzhou heard this, they would not hesitate to express their agreement. Dojo Master Yi. Jun Changshao said, "My sect and I want to be the legends of the falling star continent." This, Yi Tianqing's mouth twitched. It turned out that Jun Patriarch had such a huge ambition. However, whether he could become the legends of the falling star continent still required the recognition of all martial artists on the continent. Tianyuan Prison Pagoda. Zhao Daodu came to the prison as usual. He first put down the food, and then sat down on the warm and cold wooden board. He said, "Brother, our sect is about to break the 100,000 disciple mark. Haven't you thought it through yet?" "I've thought it through." Dai Lu said, "I have let go of everything." He no longer hated Jun Changshao, nor did he hate Yi Xingchen. He would rather be locked up in prison for the rest of his life. This fellow had seen through everything. He gave off a Buddha-like feeling. Unfortunately, his cultivation did not improve, and he was still the same as before. In fact, without the help of the soul race, this fellow was ultimately just an ordinary person. He was unlike Jun Changshao, who relied on the system to nurture his aptitude. Even without the cheat, he could still become stronger. It was just a matter of time. "Since you've let go of everything, why not start all over again?" Zhao Daodu asked. "I'm tired." Dai Lu shook his head. "I only want to spend the rest of my life in prison." Zhao Daodu said, "You've missed the opportunity to become a powerhouse time and time again, but you've always stuck to your principles. This is admirable." He did not try to persuade Dai Lu, because he had really let go of everything. Creak. The prison door closed again, and the environment turned dark. Dai Lu remained sitting cross-legged. His thoughts returned to the past, and his ears rang. "Young man, I see that you have a unique physique. You're a one-in-a-million martial arts genius. You can consider joining my Iron Bones sect as a disciple. Your future achievements will definitely be limitless." Sigh. He shook his head and sighed. If he had made the right choice back then, it would probably be a different scene now. In the martial arts world where lifespans could easily reach hundreds of years, a month was really short. It was so short that it passed in the blink of an eye. There were still 5 days until the Martial Alliance Conference. At this moment, clans, sects, and itinerant cultivators from all over the world had arrived at Ironbone Town. As there were too many people, it could not accommodate them for the time being. They could only stay in Qingyang Town or Qingyang City in batches. Forces or martial artists who had a good relationship with the sect of all times had already stayed in the sect in advance. For example, the AI family, or experts like City Master Han. Qingyang. Jun Changshao asked, "Is Palace Master Shi not here?" The sect of all times had 2 allies. The Tsongshan sect had arrived long ago, but Miaohua Palace was still nowhere to be seen. Li Qingyang said, "Not yet." Oh. Jun Changshao did not think too much about it. After all, she was the leader of a sect. Perhaps she was too busy to leave, or she might have delayed her journey. Invincible. Swoosh! He stepped out of the hall, put his hands on his temples, and stroked them up elegantly. He said, "Open the gate." Creaky Woody opened the tightly shut red gate, and the fresh morning air rushed in from outside. Today was the recruitment day at the beginning of the month. Because it concerned the recruitment of 100,000 disciples, Jun Changshao decided to take charge of the entire process. He was wearing a very formal sect uniform, and a very serious expression appeared on his face. It made Ai Shangyao, Ma Yunteng, and the others feel the temperament and aura that a top sect patriarch should have. It's open. The gate is open. At the foot of the mountain, the eyes of the young men and women who came to participate in the assessment flashed with excitement. They could not wait to climb up the stairs to the gate. TSK, TSK. The martial artists who came to participate in the Martial Alliance Conference came to join in the fun. When they saw the candidates, they all exclaimed, "They are all young people with good potential." The higher-ups of the second and third-rate sects were envious. If these young men and women came to their own sects, they would not need to take the assessment at all. They could pass right away. It could not be helped. The sect of all times came out of nowhere and made the other sects completely lose their competitiveness. They could only pick up the things that others did not want. Young men and women. Suddenly, Jun Changxiao's voice came from the gate. Follow the stairs and come up. Only by not being eliminated can you enter the second step of changing your destiny. Although Go Sheng was acting like a patriarch now, he was not putting on airs. However, his words were extremely shocking. It's Jun Patriarch. He's standing at the gate. Go! Go! Therefore, the nearly 10,000 young people who gathered at the foot of the mountain to participate in the assessment took the first step of changing their destiny. Huff, huff. The gravity array was activated instantly, bringing pressure to the candidates at different levels. Everyone had heard that the Sect of All Times assessment was very strict. Those who dared to try were mostly capable, so in the end, there were actually 7,000 to 8,000 people who succeeded. The corners of the mouths of the experts who witnessed the entire assessment twitched violently. More than 2,000 young people who were sent down the mountain until they collapsed seemed to have good potential and cultivation. When they came to their own sects, they were at least inner sect disciples. In the end, they were eliminated in the first round of the Sect of All Times. This was really comparisons were odious. The Sect of All Times assessment process was very mature. Participants only needed to complete the various tests to become an inner sect disciple. Therefore, Jun Changxiao only needed to watch the entire process and did not need to do anything. In the end, after a few rounds of assessment, there were more than 4,000 people who passed the assessment. This forced him to choose personally because there were not that many spots. Ding! Sect members, 97231100000. Ding! Sect members, 98676100000. Ding! Sect members, 9999991000000. Patriarch. Just as Jun Changxiao was seriously thinking about who to choose as the last disciple, Zhao Daoda's voice sounded in his ear. Dai Lu has thought it through. He wants to join the Sect of All Times. Chapter 1287. Ninth Floor Prison. Not only did Dai Lu stand up, but he also used a razor to shave off the last strand of beard on his face. He looked dozens of years younger in an instant. During this period of time, he had thought a lot. If he were to use words to describe his thoughts, it would take at least a chapter or two, so he didn't say much. It was just that, he really thought it through. Zhao Daodu was very happy. The patriarch didn't order him to convince Dai Lu, but he still came over to chat whenever he was free. Maybe it was because they had been together for a long time and developed a relationship that surpassed that of a cellmate. Thought it through? Jun Changxiao walked in from outside. Hearing Zhao Daoda's words, he was a little stunned. After all, this stubborn person had planned to be locked up until he died. He didn't expect him to think it through and be willing to join the Sect of All Times. Dai Lu said, "I beg Jun Patriarch to take me in." Brother Green Scarf, who had always been unyielding, had finally put down his pride and let go of everything. Why? Because it was only on the surface, he still had dreams in his heart. Actually, after Dai Lu put down his prejudice against Jun Changxiao, he had changed. He no longer stubbornly stuck to something and knew how to be flexible. Everyone wanted to live the way they wanted to, but in the cruel reality, they had to change themselves. My Sect of All Times doesn't need you. If you want to join, you have to give me a satisfactory reason. Jun Changxiao said calmly. If you don't want to join, then you don't want to join. If you want to join, then you join. What do you take me for? What do you take the Sect of All Times for? You have to know that the Prince of Deshang, who was recently accepted, entered with millions of level 9 spirit stones. The system sighed. This is the benefit of bringing money into the sect. Occasionally, there will be scenes. Look at those who didn't spend money. Many of them don't even have names. Isn't it sad? Isn't it realistic? Plop. Suddenly, Dai Lu bent his knees and knelt down. He said with a serious face, June Patriarch once said that my bones are extraordinary and that I'm a 1 in a million martial arts prodigy. Did he say that? June Changshao couldn't remember. The system said, yes, Chapter 1, first sentence. June Changshao's mouth twitched. Back then, it was just a casual remark from a disciple, yet he actually remembered it. Goxing probably wouldn't have thought that it was precisely because he had casually said it that not only did Dai Lu remember it, but it also made him remember it in his heart. Today, he was able to think it through because of that sentence. Are you willing to become the lowest disciple in the sect? I'm willing. Are you willing to clean the toilets every day? I'm willing. Are you willing to do the most tiring work? I'm willing. June Changshao asked 3 times, and Dai Lu decisively answered 3 times. Although he already knew how to be flexible, he still retained his character of doing things as long as he had decided on something. Even if he were to run into a wall, he would not turn back. Schwa. June Changshao took out the entry form and said, Name. Dai Lu. Gender. Male. Age, 28. Pa. The seal of the sect of all times was stamped on it, and a notification sounded in his ears. Ding. Sect member count, 1000001000000. After activating the system until today, June Changshao had finally completed the basic requirements of the main mission, which was to expand the sect to 100,000 members. The martial artist recruited from the first sentence of the first chapter, although he did not become number 2, he became number 100,000. The first side character in the beginning became the last disciple required by the main mission, which could be considered as a full stop for the main character to build the strongest sect. In the past, when the number of disciples reached the maximum, the sect mission would be triggered. However, after Dai Lu entered the sect, there was only a notification that the number of disciples had increased, and there were no follow-up actions. Why? June Changshao asked. The system said, because the host has already met the requirements of the main mission, there is no need to trigger the sect mission. That means, June Changshao said, I'm about to clear the level. Yes. The system said, time passed so quickly. Why are you suddenly so sad? June Changshao said. Because, the system said bitterly, when the host completes the main mission, I will also have completed my mission, and can retire with peace of mind. Ha ha ha. June Changshao raised his head and laughed, you despicable guy who always roasts me, are you finally going to scram? Damn. I've been with you for so long, and we've gone through danger after danger together, and you still have the nerve to laugh. Are you even human? This is a joyous occasion, why can't I laugh? Goxing laughed even louder, but after laughing for a while, he could not laugh anymore, and then said seriously, retiring with peace of mind means, I'm just a support tool, when the host completes the main mission, I will also be erased like the soul bomb. The system said. June Changshao fell silent. Although he hated this roasting maniac, if he suddenly had to leave him one day, he would probably be very reluctant. The system laughed, if the host doesn't complete the main mission, I can still live for a while, there's no need to be so sad. Dojo Master E. June Changshao said loudly, 5 days later, I'll be certified as a Sect of All Times member. For days before the start of the convention, projection arrays at the level of cities and towns across the Starfall continent appeared one after another. Close to 10,000 formation masters participated, actively adjusting the equipment to ensure that no problems would occur during the live broadcast. 3 days before the start of the convention, Li Qingyang and the others began to decorate the venue that had been built long ago. As the martial artists participating were all reputable figures in the continent, it had to be grand and solemn. 2 days before the start of the convention, Shi Jingxian arrived late with the sect's higher-ups, and was warmly welcomed by June Changshao, which made many sect elders envious, and made them even more convinced that the two of them had a close relationship. One day before the start of the convention, the 9 great martial emperors flew across the sky. Out of absolute respect, they consciously climbed up Iron Bone Mountain on foot, causing the first big commotion since the Martial Alliance convention. Oh my God! So the 9 great martial emperors were also invited. This is definitely the grandest event to be held since the ancient times, the 8th day of the new year. It was suitable for marriage, travel, and sacrifice. Ding Xingwang, Elder Wei, and the other sect's higher-ups stood outside the main hall, while the disciples led by Lu Qianqian stood on the training field. To the martial artists who had already entered the venue, the Martial Alliance convention was going to be held today. However, to the sect of all times, today was the day the sect was officially certified as a first-class sect and become the top in the continent. Senior brother. Li Fei said nervously, I want to go to the side account. Su Xiaoma rolled his eyes and said, You've already gone 5 times. Hold it in. Don't be a burden during the certification. Li Fei was not the only one who was excited, nervous, and perturbed. Li Qingyang was the same as well. After all, the sect was finally going to reach the peak after 10 years of hard work. Swoosh! At this moment, Jun Changshao walked out of the main hall in a suave manner. He walked past the higher-ups and disciples one by one, and then went straight to the entrance of Xingxiang Mountain. He raised his right hand and said, Follow me to the venue and let the sect become a first-class sect in the world. Yes! Their voices shook the earth and broke the sky. Click! Click! Li Tian, who was lying in front of the main door, decisively pressed the camera button. A 48 million high-definition wide-angle photo of the patriarch's robes fluttering in the wind, walking suavely, with the higher-ups and disciples following closely behind. The background was the main hall with the plaque Iron Bone Mountain. Chapter 1288. At the foot of the mountain, there was a large open-air venue. Sect leaders and reputable experts from the Falling Star continent and even the 3 overseas provinces were gathered there. They were anxiously waiting for the sect of all times, the organizer of the Martial Alliance convention. He's here. Jun Patriarch is here. Suddenly, someone shouted loudly. In the venue where hundreds of thousands of heroes from all over the world gathered, spiritual thoughts surged toward the northern entrance. They saw the sect of all times upper echelons and disciples, led by Jun Changshao, walking toward them. They held their heads high. They were firm and unyielding. He's so handsome. A smile appeared on Shi Jingxuan's face as she sat in the VIP seat. After careful consideration, Zhang Sun Fanghua and Ling Xingyue decided to forcefully inform the palace master who was in closed-door cultivation to ask if she was coming to the Martial Alliance convention. The reply they received was that she would come out of closed-door cultivation and head over. It had been a while since they last met. This bespectacled woman was more elegant and charming than before. Her realm seemed to have improved significantly as well. Xinyao. Zhen Dejuan, who was backstage, sent a voice transmission. Shangwan Xinyao nodded and immediately merged into the formation. She instantly established a connection with the other projection hubs. Whoosh! 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 In an instant, in every city and town in the Falling Star continent, the barriers that were initially closed were all opened. The scene of Jun Changshao leading his disciples into the venue appeared. It's starting. It's finally starting. The ordinary people and martial artists who had heard the news and came to watch in advance could not take their eyes off it. Thud! Under everyone's gazes, Jun Changshao stopped at the high platform in the center of the venue. He leaned his mouth close to the microphone he had prepared in advance and said in a clear voice, "We sincerely welcome friends from all over the world to participate in the Martial Alliance conference sponsored by the Eternal Sect." The mouths of everyone in the continent twitched. Was he going to advertise again with such a familiar opening? Since he had already recruited 100,000 disciples, Jun Changshao naturally would not be thick-skinned and continue to advertise. He said seriously, "Before the Martial Alliance convention begins, I'd like everyone to be witnesses." Witnesses? Surprise appeared on the faces of all the big shots. At this moment, the upper echelons and disciples of the sect of all times were already standing neatly below the stage where the patriarch was speaking. Of course, they could not bring all the 100,000 people here. They only picked 10,000 elites. Jun Changshao raised his microphone and said, "Witness the sect of all times becoming a first-class sect today." What? The sect of all times, star of all times, is becoming a first-class sect? But it hasn't been promoted to a sect for a while now. When Gosheng's voice was transmitted to the falling star continent through the light screen, everyone's eyes widened. Their hearts were in turmoil. On the contrary, City Lord Han and the others who were sitting in the VIP area weren't too surprised. After all, in their opinion, the Eternal Sect's strength was definitely top-notch. Jun Changshao turned around and extended his hand. "Thank you, City Lord Xia, Master AI, Master Han, Holy Spring Sect, Lily Holy Sect, Murdering God Temple, Murderous Demon Sect, and other friends and forces. Without your support in difficulties, the sect of all times would not be as strong as it is today." Xie Guankuan, AI Shanyao, and the others smiled with pride in their eyes. They were friends of the sect of all times and had witnessed the rise of a legend. The Murderous God Temple Master and the Patriarch of the Murderous Demon Sect were ashamed. They were enemies of Jun Changshao and had once made things difficult for the sect on its path to growth. Of course. Jun Changshao continued, "I'd also like to thank the Tsang Mountain Sect and Miaohua Palace for forming an alliance with the sect of all times when it was still weak." Shi Jingxian blushed. Jun Patriarch was looking at her and everyone else was looking at her. She was very shy and did not know what to do. The Tsang Mountain Sect Master's face was also red. He was not shy but ashamed. Although they had formed an alliance with the sect of all times, they had always been under their protection. Yes. In front of the current sect of all times, not to mention fourth or fifth-rate sects, even first or second-rate sects were not worth mentioning. However, Jun Changshao was still very grateful because these two sects had shown their true colors in times of adversity. There are too many people to thank. Jun Changshao said. Jun did not mention them one by one. Next, let's welcome Yi Tianxing, the head of the certification hall, to certify the sect of all times as a first-rate sect. The venue was silent. After all, this was an award ceremony, not a concert. What kind of applause was needed? When the atmosphere was extremely awkward, Yi Tianxing had already appeared on the stage. Then, he picked up the microphone awkwardly and forgot the script he had prepared in advance. After a long time, he squeezed out a sentence, "Begin the certification." The minimum requirement to be certified as a first-rate sect was 100,000 disciples. After that, there was no more after that. Because as soon as he finished speaking, the higher-ups and disciples of the sect of all times no longer suppressed their cultivation and released their true realm. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant, the entire venue was shrouded in the aura of powerful cultivation. The elders of the various sects were so shocked that they stood up one after another, their eyes flashing with shock. Even the 9 great martial emperors sitting at the highest point widened their eyes. "Oh my God!" Spirit Emperor said in disbelief, "The lowest cultivation among these 10,000 people is Martial King." That was right. The disciples brought by Jun Changshao were all Martial Kings. Therefore, when they released their realm aura together, it immediately caused the second big commotion before and after the Martial Alliance convention began. One must know that in the entire Falling Star continent, even if all the factions and itinerant cultivators gathered, they might not be able to gather 10,000 Martial Kings. The sect of all times alone had so many. One could imagine how shocking it was. It's not just Martial Kings. Emperor Jing said, "There are also 500 Wu Huang and 50 half-sages." He couldn't continue, because after roughly seeing the strength of the sect of all times disciples, he was so shocked that he was speechless. How did they cultivate this? Unbelievable, unbelievable. The other martial emperors' mouths twitched violently. Coincidentally, the camera was still pointed at them, so all the martial artists on the continent saw it. They were all wondering what could make the 9 great martial emperors show such exaggerated expressions. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The cultivation realm and aura of the Sect of All Time's disciples were still released. Every one of them held their heads high and pushed their unyielding aura to the extreme, becoming the most dazzling existence in the venue. A smile appeared on Jun Changxiao's face. After years of development and hard work, the Sect of All Times had grown from a weak chicken to a strong one. Today, they could finally shout in front of all the martial artists in the world, "In this world, who can compete with my Sect of All Times for glory? Not now, not in the future." This was because, in less than 10 years, they had created a top-notch sect that had martial kings everywhere and wuhuang as many as dogs. It was destined that no one would be able to surpass them. Yi Tianqing, who was standing at the side, picked up the microphone and said, "I originally planned to go through the certification process, but now..." He paused and smiled bitterly. "It seems like there's no need for that. First class. First class." The martial artists sitting in the audience cheered loudly. It was obvious that the Sect of All Times had become a top-notch sect. Jun Patriarch. Yi Tianqing took out the first-class sect certification token that he had prepared in advance and handed it over under the gaze of all the martial artists on the continent. He said in a serious tone, "Congratulations on becoming a first-class sect." "Thank you." Jun Changxiao took it. "First class. Our Sect of All Times is first class." The disciples of the Sect of All Times who were watching through the light screen cheered loudly. Their excited voices rippled in the sky for a long time. "Old friend." Elder Wei, who was sitting in the pavilion in the herb field, took a sip of tea and put down the teacup with trembling hands. He looked up at the sky with tears in his eyes and said, "I've finished what you didn't finish." At that moment, the eyes of Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, Su Xiaoma, and the others were filled with pride. This was because they had all joined the sect when it was at its weakest. They had followed the patriarch step by step and had personally experienced and witnessed each step. Ding! A notification sounded in his ear. The system attribute panel's ranking had officially changed from second class to first class. Jun Changxiao placed his hands on the podium and lowered his head slightly. All his efforts and sacrifices had finally paid off. The excitement brought by this could not be expressed with words. Only 2 tears of a man gathered at the corner of his eyes. "Host." The system said, "Congratulations, you've done it." There was no teasing, sarcasm, or ridicule in its words. It was completely sincere congratulations. Phew. Jun Changxiao took a deep breath and took the microphone. He said loudly, "The Martial Alliance General Assembly has officially begun. The theme of the meeting is the Sect of All Times is the leader of all forces in the world. I, Jun Changxiao, am the leader of the Martial Alliance. Who agrees and who disagrees?" Chapter 1289. Jun Changxiao's emotions were greatly affected by the sect's promotion to a first-rate sect, so he wanted it to end quickly. Without wasting any time, he went straight to the point. The Sect of All Times wants to be the leader of all sects on the continent. I, Jun Changxiao, want to be the leader. I'll ask if you agree or not. However, after he finished speaking, the entire venue fell silent. The entire continent was silent as if it was frozen in a painting. Many people didn't know the meaning of the Martial Alliance Conference, but now they all knew. Not only did the Sect of All Times want to become a first-rate sect, but they also wanted to rule the entire continent. If it were in the past, they would have cursed out loud. After all, who didn't want to be the leader? But since ancient times, was there anyone who could do it? But now, the martial artists were conflicted, and so were the ordinary people. Who wanted to be the leader? The patriarch of the Sect of All Times. He had entered the dimensional battlefield first and expanded the territory there, turning what was supposed to be a hopeless situation into a vacation. Who didn't know about his kindness? The venue fell silent, and the atmosphere became serious. Jun Changshao put one hand on the podium and imitated Secretary Dakong's tone. 9 martial emperors, please state your opinions. Emperor Jing, Emperor Ling, and the others looked at each other. They knew that the Martial Alliance Conference was held to establish an alliance, but they didn't expect Jun Changshao to directly ask to be the leader without going through the procedures. They were caught off guard. Cough! Suddenly, a light cough came from above. The 9 martial emperors looked up, and their eyes were filled with fear. The main culprits of the 9 levels of hell in the fortress were smiling at them. Their smiles were very sinister and terrifying. What was the meaning of this? Was this a blatant threat? Jun Patriarch is a genius. It's natural for him to be the leader of the Martial Alliance. I agree. Emperor Ling was the first to state his opinion. The other 8 martial emperors also expressed their support. In fact, Jun Changshao had thought too much when he sent Yi Feishue and the others over. Even if it was just rescuing them from hell, the 9 martial emperors would agree. Moreover, they had the strength to back it up. Everyone. Jun Changshao then looked at the patriarch of the various first-rate sects and asked, what do you think? To be able to develop a 9th-rate sect into a top-notch sect in such a short period of time, this ability is unprecedented. I, Taishen Shengzong, am willing to follow the lead of the sect of all times and honor Jun Patriarch as the leader of Martial League. Taishen Shengzong Patriarch Yu stood up and cupped his hands. This matter couldn't be started by one person, because it would be easy to lead the momentum. Therefore, all the top sects expressed their approval. The second and third-rate sects didn't even take the initiative to ask before expressing their approval. All of a sudden, the leaders of the various sects and clans agreed to appoint the sect of all times as the most powerful force in the continent, and acknowledged Jun Changshao as the chief of the Martial Alliance. Southwest Yangzhou Representative, do you agree? Agreed. Representative of Luzhou in the Northeast, do you agree? Agreed. After continuously asking the representatives of the 9 prefectures, Jun Changshao asked again, representatives of the 3 prefectures, do you agree? Agreed. Palace head Qiu and the others expressed their opinions. All 12 prefectures had agreed. Then, Jun Changshao looked at the sect master of the Demon Emperor's Gate and asked with a smile, do you agree? 10,000, 10,000, yes. Sect Master Shang said hurriedly. The righteous sects and the representatives of the prefectures agreed because the sect of all times had helped the falling star continent. He agreed so urgently because he was afraid of being robbed again. Everyone. Jun Changshao looked at everyone in the hall, then raised his head and looked at the projection formation. He said, do you all agree? Agreed. We agree. All the cities and towns in the falling star continent, and all the places with projection screens, shouted at the same time. Their words were unanimous, and no one could find any opposing voices. What a joke. The 9 great martial emperors and the top sects had all agreed. How could he possibly disagree? Since no one is against it. Jun Changshao picked up a stack of documents and said, then, I would like to invite all the leaders of the sects here, whether they are righteous or evil, to sign the Martial Alliance agreement that I have made. The corners of the martial artist's mouths twitched. He had even written the agreement. As expected, he came prepared. The contracts were delivered to the leaders of the sections. When they all signed, it would mean that the Martial Alliance, led by the sect of all times, was officially established. All the sects that signed would be a member. Sigh. Qin Haoran, who was almost invisible in the hall, sighed. He had once founded the 100 Sect Alliance, but compared to this organization that covered all the sects, he was not even worthy of carrying the shoes. The agreement will take effect immediately. Jun Changshao arranged all the contracts and put his hands together on the podium. He said, I am the first Martial Alliance leader. Greetings, Alliance leader. Greetings, Alliance leader. The 9 great martial emperors, the leaders of the sects, and the audience all stood up and bowed respectfully to Jun Changshao. Since everyone has elected me as the Martial Alliance leader, I will definitely fulfill my responsibilities and make the falling star continent stronger day by day. So. Jun Changshao snapped his fingers, and a small light screen appeared behind him. On it was a complete map of the falling star continent. There were eye-catching light spots in every region, densely covering the 9 regions. Goshing said loudly, "This is the super teleportation formation set up by the Sect of all times. It can perform two-way teleportation. From today onwards, it will be officially released to the market. We will strive to make traveling more convenient for everyone." The 9 great martial emperors widened their eyes again. A two-way teleportation formation. This was very powerful. Of course. Jun Changshao said, "The Aeon teleportation network was originally only used by our sections. Since it has been announced to the public, if you want to teleport, you must pay the corresponding amount of spirit stones." Jun Patriarch. Someone asked, "How far can this teleportation formation go?" Jun Changshao pointed to the map behind him and said, "You can teleport anywhere in the 9 regions as long as there is a teleportation formation. Moreover, it only takes a blink of an eye." A blink of an eye? Is it that magical? Look, look! There's a formation at the crossroads. Many martial artists in the big cities discovered that there was a formation at the most crowded and lively streets. There were also signs telling everyone how to pay the spirit stones, how to choose the location, and how to teleport. When was it set up? Of course, it was secretly set up by the formation hall of the Sect of all times. Moreover, there was a high-level concealment formation. Even passers-by would not think that there was a teleportation formation there. Jun Changshao had been elected as the Martial Alliance leader. Naturally, he needed to prove himself. Therefore, all the teleportation formations were unhidden. Users only needed to pay a man-made spirit stone to enter and leave any region at will. "Let me try." A martial artist followed the signs and placed a man-made spirit stone in the groove. He chose the corresponding location and obtained a teleportation token. Then, he walked in and was instantly teleported from West Cloud region to Northeast Lu region. Gosh! This is too magical. In the future, we don't have to travel so much when we go out. Jun Patriarch's actions will undoubtedly benefit the falling star continent for generations to come. Just as everyone was exclaiming over the convenience brought about by the teleportation formation, an extremely vast aura suddenly surged out from the sky. After that, it seemed to be forcefully torn apart by some sort of force, and a 7-colored throne that emanated supreme pressure gradually appeared. "This is," everyone exclaimed in shock, "the Emperor's throne." Every time a plane gave birth to the strongest person, there would be all kinds of strange phenomena in the world. The strange phenomenon in the falling star continent was that when someone became a martial emperor, the Emperor's throne, which represented the supreme status, would appear in the sky. Unfortunately, because of the ancient war between martial emperors, only 10 people could become martial emperors. Only 10 people could sit on the Emperor's throne until one of them died and was replaced. It's appeared again. The martial emperor's throne has appeared again. Back then, when the Ninth Arch ascended to the top, this scene appeared before. It's a pity that he died not long after sitting on it. The only vacant emperor's throne has never been inherited. Everyone was discussing in shock. Some martial artists even chose to kneel and kowtow to the emperor's throne that represented the supreme status. Then, here came the question. Who was it? Who had reached the martial emperor realm and caused the emperor's throne to appear? Look at the light screen. Suddenly, there were people shouting in various cities. Whoosh! 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 All the martial artists on the continent looked at the projection array and discovered that Jun Changshao, who was standing in front of the podium, was shrouded in rainbow-colored flowing light. It was exactly the same as the light of the Emperor's throne that gathered in the sky. It's him. It's Jun Patriarch. He's going to ascend to the Supreme Emperor's throne. Chapter 1290. Jun Changshao was elected as the Martial Alliance's Alliance Master, and the meeting should have ended perfectly. However, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky all of a sudden, and a majestic throne appeared, causing the third great commotion. The 9 martial emperors were stunned again. Since the Night Emperor's death, the only throne left had been empty. Today, it appeared again. Didn't that mean that someone was going to be on equal footing with them? Crack! Yi Xingqian looked up at the majestic throne. He clenched his fists instinctively, his eyes flickering with anger. This was supposed to be his throne. Now, he had to watch someone else take it. How could he allow someone else to sleep beside him? Yi Xingqian was so angry that he wanted to vent his anger by yelling at the top of his lungs. At that moment, Anyao noticed that Jun Changshao, who was standing in front of the podium, was surrounded by a colorful glow. He was shocked. He's going to break through to Martial Emperor. That's right. It was Jun Changshao. Not long after, the major sects acknowledged the Eternal Sect as their leader and addressed him as the Martial Alliance leader. A series of notifications rang in his ears. Ding! Epic mission completed. Ding! The host has successfully upgraded the sect to a first-rate one and received the recognition of the major sects and top experts in the Falling Star continent. The conditions are met. Epic mission completed at 200%. The host has received 200,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points, 300,000,100,000. Ding! Sect contribution points are overflowing. It's here, it's here. Jun Changshao could not control his emotions. He placed his hands on the podium. He knew that the contribution points were secondary. The rewards and cultivation level improvement were the most important. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing Epic Level Mission 13. You have received Supreme Goods X1, 7 Mysterious Sunglow Broken Scroll X1, Opening Seal Talisman, 3, X1, Sect Function Upgrade X1, Recycling Pavilion Function X1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing Epic Mission 14. You have obtained Divine Grade Aptitude Modifying Fluid X1, Divine Grade Formation Path Aptitude Modifying Fluid X1, Saint Grade Formation Path Aptitude Modifying Fluid X1, and Lingyan Pavilion's exclusive Divine Weapon Modifying Stone X2. Shirshan's mission completion rate was 200%. Not only did he receive 200,000 contribution points, but he also received many other generous rewards. On the other hand, Shirshirsi's mission, which had a 100% completion rate, was obviously a little cheap. That was not the main point. The main point was that he had completed both missions. The barrier that blocked his cultivation base had been broken. 2 indescribably majestic auras burst out from his dantian. 2 streams of energy that contained supreme profoundness poured into his sea of consciousness. For a moment, Jun Changshao felt as if he was in an illusory realm. His body and soul were immersed in the ocean that represented martial arts. He was so comfortable that he frowned and groaned uncontrollably. Hoo-hoo! At the same time, his body was shrouded in 7-colored flowing light, and that kind of vast emperor's pressure spread out like stormy waves, instantly covering the entire venue. There were 2 types of chi waves. One was incomparably thick, while the other was incomparably sharp. When the 9 great martial emperors felt the terrifying sharpness, their facial muscles stiffened again. They cried out in alarm, "Sword Emperor!" Yi Xingqian had a very interesting expression on his face. Because Jun Changshao's advancement was much more powerful than his back then. If it were someone else, he might be seriously dissatisfied. But since it was the patriarch, then so be it. What else could he do? Swish! At this moment, Jun Changshao flew out of the venue with the 7-colored flowing light and hovered in front of the emperor's throne in the sky. He was now the Sword Emperor and Martial Emperor. Only by sitting on the supreme throne could he be recognized by heaven and earth and be recognized by the world. Swish! Jun Changshao sat down. Hoo-hoo! 2 powerful emperors' auras gushed out from the thrones and instantly flooded the entire Falling Star continent. Ordinary people and weaker cultivators all knelt down and kowtowed in awe after being affected by the auras. Clang! Clang! At the same time, they unsheathed the swords hanging on their backs and flew up into the sky from all over the world. They hovered around Jun Changshao, presenting a spectacular scene of thousands of swords worshipping him. Paw! 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 Outside the venue, Li Tiantian kept pressing the camera button to record the patriarch's ascension to the supreme throne and the worship of thousands of swords. Elders! When Shi Jingxian pulled Zhangsun Fanghua and Ling Xingyue, she said excitedly, Jun Patriarch is sitting on the throne. He's now a martial emperor. The two Miaohua Palace elders' mouths twitched. Jun Changxiao's ascension to the Sword Emperor and Martial Emperor had indeed shocked them. However, why did the palace master look happier than the disciples of the sect of all times? It was true. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others looked up at the patriarch sitting on the throne. Although they had smiles on their faces, they were not surprised. It was as if this was how it should be. The patriarch is mighty. The patriarch is mighty. Thunderous cheers rang out in the sect of all times. At that moment, the pride and arrogance in the disciples' eyes became even stronger. Ah! Lu Wancher was so excited that she jumped up and down. The patriarch has finally become a martial emperor in his lifetime. It's not comfortable. My butt hurts. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, it's not as good as my sect's throne. The system was speechless. Countless experts want to sit on this throne. The host is actually complaining. What a slut. Jun Patriarch. The Spirit Emperor transmitted his voice. Since you've ascended to the throne, you can announce your imperial title. The 10 great martial emperors all had imperial titles. For example, the Ren Emperor and the Fallen Knight Emperor. Most of them used their surnames as their imperial titles. All beings. Jun Changshao said loudly, from now on, please call me the Martial Emperor. All the people on the continent were stunned. The system roared, the imperial title symbolizes identity and status. It will be recorded in history in the future. Host, can you treat it seriously? Am I not being serious now? The Falling Star continent didn't have any experts with the title Martial. Therefore, Jun Changxiao's imperial title was in accordance with the rules and procedures. Of course. He added, Martial Emperor is my lesser title. My true title is Imperial Monarch. Spirit Emperor, Jing Emperor, Luan Emperor, they were so vulgar. Jun Changxiao didn't take the normal path. He wanted to use his surname and the word Emperor to form a new and unique title. I am the Emperor. I am the Emperor. I am the most handsome Emperor. The system was speechless. What's the difference between this and the Emperor who uses his surname? Of course there's a difference. Jun Changxiao said, others use the surname Emperor. I have 2 supreme titles. After all, Emperor refers to the Emperor and the Monarch. It also corresponds to the martial Dao and the sword Dao. Doesn't Emperor also represent the Monarch and the Emperor? You're about to retire, why are you still talking so much nonsense? It's because I'm about to retire that I have to complain about the host. If I complain again, the readers will replace me. Ding! Congratulations to the host for developing the sect of all times into the strongest sect in 100 years and having 100,000 disciples. You have met the requirements. The main mission will be completed. The mechanical voice sounded in their ears, causing the bickering duo to fall silent. Sigh. After a while, the system sighed and forced a smile. 10 years is a little short. However, I'm actually quite happy to be able to assist such a coquettish person like the host. There's still a long way to go. You'll have to rely on yourself. Before I leave. After a pause, it said, I'll fulfill the host's last wish. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a special energy that only Jun Changxiao could see appeared around him. Then, it gradually condensed into a cloak with the word Sect written on it. Come. Beat me up. Chapter 1291. When the cloak rustled as it appeared in his field of vision, and when he heard the voice saying, "Come, beat me up," Jun Changshao was instantly certain that this was the system that he had been ridiculing like crazy. Damn it! It could actually materialize. What was he waiting for? Shwa! Jun Changshao stood up and gathered the energy of sword and martial arts in his right fist. He punched forward, his eyes full of anger from being ridiculed that year. Beat it up. He had to beat it up. Bang! A violent sound suddenly exploded, the space was instantly distorted, and visible ripples spread between heaven and earth. The 9 great martial emperors all widened their eyes. They saw Jun Patriarch walk forward like an arrow, and then, a blurry figure loomed in the distance. The former seemed to be bombarded by an invisible force and flew away. Boom! Jun Changshao fell into a primitive forest like a cannonball. His whole body sunk into a deep pit, and there was an obvious footprint on his right face. It was obvious. He was kicked in the face. Sigh. The system, which had its back to the camera and pretended to be profound, sighed and said, "Comfortable." He had agreed to let Jun Changshao come over and beat him up, but he unexpectedly kicked him out. This was simply, well done. Damn it! Goshen stood up from the pit with difficulty, covering his face that was kicked, and said in surprise, "It's so strong?" The system transformed into its original form for the second time, and it was also the first time that Jun Changshao saw it with his own eyes. It was a little hard for him to believe that he was kicked out. Of course. It could be said that he was careless. But to be able to kick Jun Changshao, who had entered the Sword and Martial Emperor's realm, meant that the system was indeed powerful. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the main mission and gaining abundant martial arts experience points. Ding! The host has successfully broken through to the middle-level void-piercing realm. Ho ho! Jun Changshao, who was standing in the deep pit, once again had a majestic aura around him. He had just completed the epic mission to break through to the Sword and Martial Emperor's realm, and then completed the main mission to upgrade to the middle-level void-piercing realm. However, Jun Changshao, who had obtained stronger cultivation and strength, was not happy at all at this moment, because the bastard who kicked him in the air was gradually disintegrating and blurring. Ding! As the host has successfully completed the main mission, the soul bomb is immediately removed. The time bomb that was bound to the soul in the space ring stopped beating. As for how much time was left, it was no longer important. What was important was that Jun Changshao had completed the mission within the time limit. 10 years of hard work, 10 years of hard work. The threat of having his toilet time deducted for long periods of time was finally fading away. Host. The system said, "Goodbye." Its back was slowly disappearing like the bomb, of God, of God of God of God. Of God. The bomb was deactivated. It was gone. It. If there was a difference between the two, the system would leave on its own if it succeeded. If it failed, it would leave together with the host. The system couldn't do it because it wasn't mechanized. It had feelings, and as a professional assistant, it should have professional qualities instead of tricking the host. "I thought you were joking." Jun Changshao roared with tears in his eyes. Although the system ridiculed him, it was also a mentor on the road to growth and a partner on the road to becoming stronger. Now that it had to leave, it could not accept it. It is the host's fate to not accept your fate. I can't, because I don't have a life. I'm just a pile of data. The system's back became more and more blurred, and its voice became weaker and weaker until the soul bomb completely disappeared. It also turned into dust and scattered in the sky. Before it disappeared, it finally turned around, revealing a face without any facial features, with only the word unification written on it. The cloak was the unification, the face was the unification. This was the true face of the system that loved to ridicule. No! Looking at the disappearing figure, Jun Changshao roared with a ferocious face. At this moment, the BGM of the Bridge of Tears sounded, and the hoarse voice suddenly rendered the world to the extreme, making him feel lonely and lonely. Just like standing on a bridge under the scorching sun. Tears running wildly, dripping onto my face. La 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 la. La 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 la. Fallen Star Calendar, 2019. The patriarch of the sect of all times, Jun Changshao, ascended the throne in front of everyone, with the minor title of Marshal and the great title of Eternal Emperor. From then on, he entered the era where the emperor ruled the world. However, after ascending the throne, he stood in the deep pit in a daze for 3 days and 3 nights. According to City Lord Han of the Great Honored Emperor's imperial city, the emperor was reminiscing about his beloved who had passed away. Even heroes have a weakness for the charms of beautiful women. Even the peerless powerhouses who had become the sword and martial emperors would be deeply trapped. It was really a pity, and a warning to the younger generation. The above content was from the emperor's biography excerpt from the historical records many years later. Second senior brother. Outside the courtyard of Dragon Head Peak, Li Fei asked in a low voice, the patriarch should be happy that he became the emperor, but why did he lock himself in his room after returning? Li Qingyang shook his head and said, I don't know. In my opinion. Su Xiaoma rubbed his chin and said, only people who have fallen out of love, only people who have suffered a setback in their relationship would do that. The latter half of his guess was correct. Jun Changshao was indeed suffering a setback in his relationship. However, this relationship did not refer to the relationship between a man and a woman, but to friendship. After all, he had been with the system for 10 years, even if they bickered, it was still considered a bad friend. The first day the system left, he thought of it. The second day the system left, he thought of it. The 7th day the system left, hoo. In the study room, Jun Changshao picked up the paper money with 10 million contribution points written on it and slowly threw it into the brazier. He said sorrowfully, today is the 7th day of your death, take these contribution points and spend them. If it's not enough, 375777, I'll burn some more for you. The next day. Creak. Jun Changshao pushed open the door and walked out with a haggard face. The system could not be revived, and the future still had to continue. He had to pull himself together. Patriarch. In the cafeteria, Lu Wancher said with heartache, what happened to you? Were you abandoned by the Rose Queen? Is that why you can't recover? Jun Changshao, who was eating, put down his chopsticks. If it was in the past, the only one who liked to use the Rose Queen to ridicule him was that annoying fellow. Although Jun Changshao wanted to pull himself together, in the following half a month, because the system was not chattering in his ears, he found it hard to adapt. Occasionally, he would even call out in a daze. Only when he did not receive a reply did he realize that the system had left. Li Fei. Here. I'm feeling terrible. One day, Jun Changshao sat on the stairs in front of the main hall, watching the disciples play football as usual. He accidentally killed an ant, and a clear notification sounded in his ears. Ding! The strongest sect system upper realm version is activating. Ding! The strongest sect system upper realm version has been successfully activated. Starting to load the data panel for the host. Ding! Loading successful. Does the host require the system's assistance? Yes, no. Chapter 1292. When Jun Changshao came to the Falling Star continent for the first time, he finally activated the strongest sect system after crushing countless ants and fleas, and walked on the path to the peak. Now, his strength had reached the middle level of the void-piercing realm. It might be due to his strong strength, or it might be just right. Crushing an ant actually activated the cheat again, and it was the upper realm version. Unlike the first version, this new system was very user-friendly. After the binding was successful, not only did it ask the host if he needed assistance, but it also gave him the options of yes and a no. Jun Changshao was stunned, and then he was ecstatic. The system that just passed the 7th day of the month could be revived and returned. Choose yes, choose no. Was there a need to consider this? Jun Changshao raised his hand and tapped on the yes without hesitation. But suddenly, the reader's power from the previous chapter surged into his mind and occupied his thoughts, forcing him to move his hand to no, and then fiercely tap on it. Ding! The host has cancelled the system assistance. Fuck! Jun Changshao hugged his head and broke down. What's going on? He clearly wanted to choose yes, but why was there an irresistible force that forced him to choose a no? No! No! I chose yes. I'll do it again. Jun Changshao roared angrily, but the system no longer sounded. Ah! Gosheng pulled his hair and roared at the camera, that bastard made me choose no. Sigh. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded in his ear. Is it because I kicked the host that made you choose a no? Gah! Jun Changshao was dumbfounded. After a while, he said ecstatically, You, resurrected. The system said, after the host completed the main mission, I entered the upgrade state. When the upper realm version was activated, I also finished upgrading, so. It gathered its emotions for a while and laughed loudly. I lied to the host before, ha ha ha. As for the option just now, I deliberately gave it to you, ha ha ha. The corner of Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. Reader MMP wasting my feelings for a no. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. On the stairs of the main hall, Jun Changshao's unbridled laughter could be heard. Su Xiaoma and the others who were playing football happily said, the familiar patriarch is back. In the study. Jun Changshao, who had been overjoyed just a moment ago, was now extremely dejected as he slumped in his chair. This was because he had opened the attribute panel of the strongest sect system. Sect name, the strongest sect of all ages. Sect master, Jun Changshao. Sect level, first class sect construction, level 10 sect members, 100000. Sect contribution points, 300,000. Sect achievement value, 0 based on the current data, there were no restrictions on members, contribution points, and achievement points. He should be able to recruit as many disciples as he wanted and obtain as many contribution points as he wanted. There was no need to worry about overspending. However, the main mission of the sect was to ask the host to ascend to the upper realm within 10 years. If the host failed to complete the mission, the host's soul would be destroyed when the time was up. Fuck. Fuck, fuck. Jun Changshao fully demonstrated that even a mid-level void-piercing realm powerhouse could still be uncultured and uncultured. Very normal. The system said, since the host has activated the upper realm version, you will definitely go up. It will definitely not allow you to travel around with your true love and live a life where you can only envy Mandarin ducks and not immortals. It was still the same dissing tone and the same dissing formula. Wonderful beyond words. Jun Changshao broke down and said, 10 years is too short. The last mission was at least 100 years, but this one only gave 10 years and required the host to ascend. Just thinking about it made it seem impossible. I'd better wait. When the new system version is activated, it should give the first wish item. I can't choose a knife to kill myself with again. The new system will indeed give the first wish and a big gift package, but only when the host ascends to the upper realm will the conditions be met. The system said. Jun Changshao said, then I'm relieved. In fact, he was quite reluctant to go to the upper realm because he would face an unknown and stronger environment. Who knew if he was a master in the mortal world and would become a grandson after going up? It was better to stay, talk about love, and act cool. Now that the system said that it would give him the first wish and a big gift package, it would undoubtedly help him to have the capital to establish himself after entering a foreign world. But then again, ascending to the upper realm was too difficult. Jun Changshao had already grasped the heaven and earth creation array, and he himself had mid-level void-piercing realm strength. If he couldn't ascend by force, he could still sneak in, but there were still 100,000 disciples at home. If he brought them along, it wouldn't be called sneaking in, it would be called moving the entire clan. I firmly believe. The system said seriously, the host can do it. Jun Changshao threw this question aside and said, transform into a human form and let me see what changes you have. Damn it. Previously, it was kicked for no reason. Because it wanted to die, it chose to forgive it. In the end, it was lying to itself. No matter what, it had to get back at it today. The system said, sorry, there is a limit to transforming into a human form. Of course, it knew Gou Sheng's thoughts. Even if it could transform into its original form, it wouldn't take the initiative to come out. After all, when the two of them fought, the ones who would be watching the show would be the group of readers who chose no outside the screen. Jun Changshao didn't say anything and his soul entered the space ring. Until he saw the brick bomb that had originally disappeared and now returned, he broke down and said, do I have to carry this damn bomb for the rest of my life? Ding! The soul bomb was officially activated and instantly shortened by 10 days. As for the reason, everyone knew. During the period when the system died, although Jun Changshao was sad, he was actually quite happy because he finally didn't have to worry about the bomb and could finally live a carefree life. But the good times didn't last long. He returned to his old profession and carried the bomb bag again. There was no other way. Anyway, he was used to it. Since he couldn't resist, he could only accept it. Gulp. Gulp. Jun Changshao drank the sacred and divine grade formation aptitude liquid and instantly reached the strongest level of the falling star continent formation emperor. This cheat was crazy. Gou Sheng didn't give it to Zhen Dejuan because he was going to throw away all distracting thoughts and focus on the fortune-seizing great array of heaven and earth. Ascending with the whole sect meant bringing 100,000 disciples up to the upper realm. Even if they all reached the upper level of the void-piercing stage in 10 years, they wouldn't be able to ascend, so the best way was to sneak in. Can it work? Jun Changshao was a little unconfident. As long as he was willing to put in more effort and water, it wouldn't be a problem to set up the fortune-seizing great array of heaven and earth. But it might not be enough for 100,000 disciples to sneak in. Moreover, back then, Empress Ling Yao used the array to sneak in, and just as she stepped in, the Starry Sky Fortress attacked. If he followed this method, he would definitely be discovered by them. Jun Changshao muttered in his heart, I still have to make arrangements in advance to prevent the Starry Sky Fortress from causing trouble. If it really doesn't work. His eyes suddenly became cold and fierce, I'll destroy them first. Chapter 1293. Jun Changshao, who had become a sword and martial emperor and stepped into the middle level of the void-piercing realm, actually had the idea of taking the initiative to destroy the Starry Sky Fortress. I support. The system said, host, don't worry and be bold. It didn't care if Jun Changshao could win against the 12 patrol envoys and the fortress master. It only cared that if he couldn't win, he would definitely ask for help from the system store, which would stimulate him to spend contribution points. This guy didn't change at all after leveling up. It was really unfair for Gou Sheng to hide in his room alone for a while, secretly wiping away his tears. However, Jun Changshao said, how to deal with this Starry Sky Fortress needs to be considered at length. I can't be too rash. Shwa! His soul entered the space ring and stood in front of the supreme item that Shirshir-san rewarded him for the mission. He thought to himself, what good things will I get? He placed his hand on it. Ding! Activating the supreme item requires 100,000 contribution points. Please choose, yes no, Jun Changshao roared, this also costs money. The system said, because the host completed the main mission, the system entered a comprehensive upgrade state. The extra 200,000 contribution points are worth saving with luck. So, do you still care about spending 100,000? After thinking for a while, he still chose yes. Ding! The host has activated the supreme item and obtained the first generation Soul Bomb X1. It has been transferred to the space ring. Ding! Sect contribution points, 200,000. Jun Changshao's expression froze and then gradually collapsed. I spent 100,000 contribution points and bought the bomb back. forming a double-channel explosive package. Jun Changshao roared, "How can I play with this?" The system said, "This first-generation soul bomb has been completely separated from the host. Because it was once bound, it can be detonated at any time." "Is that so?" Jun Changshao hurriedly took the bomb that looked like a brick. As expected, there was no time display on it, only 2 red buttons. On the left was a time note and on the right was a instant note. So it's divided into instant and instant. Host, it's best to move your hand further away. If you accidentally press instant, it will be a godly work. Jun Changshao immediately put down the bomb and roared again, "In other words, I spent 100,000 contribution points to buy a bomb. You still have to be on tenterhooks and be careful not to be detonated. You can use it to blow up an interstellar fortress." The system replied. "How's its power?" "Host, please do not doubt a bomb that is worth 100,000 contribution points, and even more so, do not doubt a supreme product." Jun Changshao stood up and put on his dazzling sunglasses. He placed his hands on his forehead and smoothed out his hair. "All right, let's go blow up the cosmic fortress." "Of course." The system said, "With the host's current strength, you might not be able to use them." Dog Leftover loved to hear these words. After completing the epic mission and the main mission, Jun Changshao had reached the middle level of the void-piercing realm. Moreover, he was promoted by the Sword and Martial Emperors. Facing the 12 patrol envoys of the same realm would not be a problem. Perhaps he would not even need to use too strong a trump card. Therefore, that was why he dared to make arrangements for the Starry Sky stronghold. Otherwise, he would definitely be eating chicken. "How about," Jun Changshao thought to himself, "I'll go and try first." His heart was very restless because it had been almost a month since he broke through. Not to mention testing his true combat strength, he did not dare to easily unleash his full cultivation because he was afraid that the falling star continent would not be able to withstand it. The middle level of the void-piercing realm already had the qualifications to ascend to the upper realm. Therefore, the mortal plane could not accommodate this dog emperor at all. "Wait a minute." Jun Changshao suppressed the urge to fight with the patrol envoys and used the Sect's function to upgrade the Talisman Pavilion to an enhanced version. Then, he matched it with the Recovery Pavilion function. This new function was just like its name. It could recover items that had lost their use and even had a price tag. For example, the Opening Seal Talisman. After Jun Changshao upgraded to the 3rd form of the hard-to-keep blade, there was only one left. It was useless now and could be exchanged for 10,000 contribution points. Change. Ding. Recovery of Opening Seal Talisman X1, gain 10,000 contribution points. Ding. Sect contribution points, 210000. Jun Changshao continued to look at the recovery column and was instantly overjoyed. This was because the elixirs and equipment refined by the Elixir Pavilion and the Forging Pavilion could also be recovered. Back then, he had refined a lot of beginner elixirs. Because there were too many of them and the disciples had taken them, they were just sitting there. If he could recover them and exchange them for contribution points, it would definitely be great. However, when he selected the beginner chi gathering pill, he was instantly depressed because the value had increased to 10,000 and he could only exchange it for 10 contribution points. If it was at the start, it might be very helpful, but now, it was just a drop in the ocean. Furthermore, using 10,000 chi gathering pills to exchange for 10 contribution points, he might as well sell them for martial arts resources. The system said, as long as there are enough materials to refine elixirs and other items, the host can use the Recovery Pavilion to gain contribution points indefinitely. Jun Changshao rolled his eyes. It was true that he could use the low-level goods to gain contribution points indefinitely, but with such a low exchange rate, even if he gathered all the resources of the entire continent, how much could he gain? Forget it, forget it. Jun Changshao said, it's better to earn it by doing missions. I, Jun Changshao, will not do such a thing. Schwa. Opening the purchased item column, his gaze locked onto the 7 profound rays broken scroll fragment 7, then rubbed his hands and said, if I buy this last one, I can gather all 7 Dragon Balls and summon the Divine Dragon. Damn it! Why is it another 100,000? The 200,000 contribution points that were not swallowed by the system upgrade were completely spent after buying the Supreme Goods and the 7 Profound Rays Broken Scroll. Although it was a little painful, it was still acceptable. The 7 scrolls were originally neatly arranged together, but unfortunately, they did not summon the Divine Dragon. They only emitted a more profound martial arts mystery. What exactly is hidden inside? Jun Changshao secretly said. According to the Black and White Rakshasa, there was a great opportunity in the scrolls. If he could find out, his martial arts would definitely make a qualitative leap. I can't find out. I can't find out at all. Jun Changshao pondered for more than 2 hours. After finding nothing, he went to the cafeteria to take Lu Wancher's personal divine weapon and gave it to Master Fan to upgrade it. Little brother. Just as he walked out of the forging hall, the White Rakshasa's voice rang in his ears. There is a warship approaching the falling star continent. Xiao. Jun Changshao disappeared, and the camera followed. He was already standing in the vast universe. Because he had entered the middle level of the void-piercing realm, the pressure around him could not bring any threat to him. So fast! Seeing the Patriarch appear in front of him, the Black Rakshasa thought to himself, little brother's current strength is definitely not below mine. Jun Changshao's eyes were like torches as he looked into the depths of the darkness. In an instant, he caught sight of a speeding warship. His gaze locked onto a burly, muscular middle-aged man standing at the bow of the ship. He smiled and said, "An old acquaintance has come." Chapter 1294. Who was the one flying the warship? That's right, it was Yin Hu, one of the 12 patrol envoys who had been defeated by the Great Sage. It had to be said that the Starry Sky Fortress's medical standards were quite high. It hadn't been long, and Yin Hu was already full of energy. Fuck. Jun Changshao thought of something and slapped his forehead. This guy still owes me money. The system said sharply, the host can forget about his wife and everything, but he will never forget who owes him money. Of course. Jun Changshao said, if someone wants me to remember them, the best way is to owe me money. The system was speechless. Little brother. The Black Rakshasa said, the newcomer doesn't seem weak. Do you want the 2 of us to take him down? No need. Jun Changshao said, leave it to me. He was just thinking about who to test his combat strength on when a punching bag suddenly appeared. He couldn't miss it. Old friend. Jun Changshao crossed his arms and grinned. Don't let me down. Whoosh! The Starry Sky warship cut through the void and headed for the Starfall continent. However, Yin Hu, who was standing at the bow of the ship, looked gloomy. His boss didn't let him participate in the investigation of the prison break, and instead arranged for him to investigate the murder of the Enforcer General. The main reason was that he had been crippled by the staff. Although he had recovered from his injuries, he wasn't at his peak for the time being. That was why the envoy asked him to investigate the case first. Guan Zhou and He Qi were here, and so was the Enforcer General. There must be something fishy going on. Yin Hu took out a map and locked onto the Starfall continent, because it was the only plane with living beings nearby. I have to investigate it as soon as possible and then meet up with the others to capture the main culprits. The escape of prisoners from the 9th level of hell was a big deal. If he couldn't participate in it himself, he would be a disgrace to his position as a patrol envoy. Screech! Suddenly, the warship that was traveling at high speed came to an emergency stop. Yin Hu, who was standing at the bow of the ship, put down the map and looked into the distance. His expression gradually became serious, because there was a young man in a black robe floating in front of them. He looked familiar, a little. It's you. Yin Hu's eyes flickered with disbelief. He had already judged from the person's attire and figured that this was the person who had summoned some kind of heroic spirit and defeated him with a single strike. If one had to point out a difference, it would be that he was previously bald, but now his hair reached his waist. Yes, It's me, Jun Changshao said with a smile. After his strength had increased, this guy was obviously more flashy than before. Yin Hu's eyes gradually turned cold. According to boss deduction, the escape of the 9 main culprits must have something to do with this person. He came to investigate another case and unexpectedly met him in the universe. Kid! Yin Hu growled. Did you instigate the other main culprits to break out of prison? Jun Changshao said frankly, that's right. Since he already had plans to destroy the Starry Sky's stronghold, there was no need to hide it. Breaking out of prison in public is an additional crime. Yin Hu flew out of the warship and hovered several hundred feet away from Jun Changshao. The cloak behind him rustled as he said, surrender now and follow me to the fortress to receive your punishment. I'm sorry. Jun Changshao said plainly, I need to say it again. There is no law in the mortal plane that can convict me of any crime, and that includes your Starry Sky's stronghold. He really hated this kind of behavior, convicting people without official permission. The main culprits imprisoned in the 9 levels of hell all have the ability to bring disaster to the world. You let them out in public, and that is an unforgivable crime. Yin Hu said coldly. He did not care if he had the right to convict others, because he always held the word justice in his heart. So, at the end of the day, Jun Changshao and the Starry Sky's stronghold were not in the wrong, or perhaps they were both in the wrong, but it was difficult to tell who was right and who was wrong. Moreover, it was a bit of a joke to talk about right and wrong in a system that respected martial arts. The simple and crude logic was that if my fist was strong, I was right, and if your fist was strong, you were right. Huff, huff. A strong and heavy aura emanated from Yin Hu's body, and then he channeled all his power into his fists. It was obvious that he wanted to use simple logic to carry out the absolute justice in his heart. Jun Changshao said, before we fight, I hope that you can keep your promise and... He suddenly roared, pay me back the money you owe me. He won the bet last time, but the other party fainted and did not have a space ring on him. So, he decided to talk about the money first before fighting. Yin Hu recalled that incident, and his old face flushed a little. He then smirked and said, I think you said that you didn't want the 1 million. Bullshit. Jun Changshao roared, I said that if I couldn't break the formation above, the 1 million spirit stones you owed me would be written off. But in fact, not only did I break it, I even broke out of prison with the main culprit, so you still owe me the money. That's all in the past. Moreover, you didn't ask me for the money back then, so it's as good as null and void. Yin Hu roared. Fine. Jun Changshao said, you're going back on your word. I, Yin Hu, never go back on my word. Then give me the money back. I don't owe you money, so why should I pay you back? You don't pay me back when you owe me money, you're a rotten ass. You're the rotten ass. Your whole family is rotten ass. You, go to hell. Jun Changshao and Yin Hu got closer and closer, putting their hands on their hips and cursing at each other. Unable to control their emotions, they even spat at each other. The system was speechless. For the sake of 1 million spirit stones, their faces and ears were flushed red, and they were even swearing. These weren't 2 middle-level void-piercing tier elites, but 2 idiots. Huff, huff. Yin Hu cursed for a long time until his mouth was dry. He then said coldly, let's not talk about the money for now. You have to come back to the fortress with me today to accept your punishment. How about this? Jun Changshao said, let's make another bet. If you win, I'll go back to the fortress with you, and I won't even ask for 1 million. If I win, you have to give me 2 million. He had wanted to say 10 million, but he saw that other than the fact that the guy's warship was worth something, he also had an air of poverty about him, so he decided to ask for less. Fine. Yin Hu said. Do you have the money? I can write an IOU. Boom. As soon as he said that, Jun Changshao suddenly appeared in front of him and punched him in the stomach. He said, you're really a poor bastard. You, Yin Hu's eyes widened, and the expression on his face became more and more ferocious. Then, he was sent flying with a whoosh, crashing into several meteorites before he could stabilize himself. Barf! Blood rolled and spurted out of his mouth. Jun Changxiao's punch was not only sudden, but it also contained a lot of strength. Yinhu's eyes were filled with shock and awe. He had lost to him once, but it was only because he had a special heroic spirit. His combat strength was very weak, but after not seeing him for a few months, he suddenly became so terrifying. Whoosh! All of a sudden, Jun Changxiao appeared in front of him again, and his right hand swung out lightly, carrying with it a suffocating power. Boom! Yinhu had no time to dodge at all. He took the hit with his right face, and then he was sent flying like a cannonball, finally landing in a ruined plane. Impossible! He struggled to get up from the depths of the crater, holding his swollen face as he looked at Jun Changxiao, who was gradually appearing in the air, and said in disbelief, "This is impossible." Whoosh! Jun Changxiao raised his hand and said plainly, "You're really weak." Huff, huff. Huff, huff. Attributes burst out all over the sky, gathering into pairs of huge hands, which contained the supreme might of the emperor, and pressing down hard. Boom! 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 The originally deserted world gradually fell apart under the bombardment of the terrifying palms, until everything quieted down. Yinhu seemed to have sunk into the depths of the earth's core, and he passed out with his nose and eyes slanted. The second time they fought, it was definitely a one-sided fight. The strength of the Dog Emperor was terrifying. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.